Sunlight streamed in from the library's towering arched windows, illuminating the dusty air. Siying wiped the sweat from her forehead, looked at the row of ancient bookshelves in front of her, and couldn't help but sigh. This place is the oldest library in the entire city, with a mountain of books. It is said that some books are older than the dynasty. She is an assistant here and has only been here for half a year. She sorts out these moldy old books every day. Today's task is to take stock of the restricted book area in the back row. The covers of those books are yellowed, as if they contain some unknown secret. Oops, why is this lost rune crooked again? Siying said to herself and stretched out her hand to straighten it. She touched the spine of the book lightly with her fingers and felt a strange warmth. The bookshelf suddenly trembled, as if it came alive. Siying was stunned. What the hell? Was there an earthquake? She took a step back, but the books on the bookshelf began to glow, and the blue light spread like water waves. The air is filled with the smell of ancient books and ink, mixed with the sharp smell of metal. Hey, stop! Before she could finish her words, a vortex exploded from the center of the bookshelf, sucking her whole body in like a huge open mouth. Siying screamed and the world spun. Her vision was blurred, and the howling of the wind sounded in her ears, as if she was traveling through an endless tunnel. Her stomach was churning, and she closed her eyes tightly, feeling like her body was being pulled into invisible threads. When she opened her eyes again, the familiar library was no longer around her. Instead there was a smoky wilderness, the air filled with the smell of burnt wood and bloody rust. The roar of horse hooves and the clang of metal colliding could be heard in the distance. Siying rubbed her eyes and got up. Where is this? She looked down at herself. Her clothes were still the same, but the sight around her made her heart beat faster. A group of soldiers rode past on war horses, their armor engraved with runes, their swords shining with a faint magical light. Their flags rustled in the wind, with intertwined dragons and phoenixes painted on them, symbolizing the confrontation between the two great powers. The edge of the battlefield is right in front of you. Siying hid behind a boulder and peeked her head secretly. It was a hellish scene before him, soldiers slashing at each other, magical fireballs exploding in the air, blasting up dirt and gravel. Screams and roars echoed in the air. A young soldier was stabbed through the chest with a sword, and blood spurted out like red rain. Siying covered her mouth, her stomach churning. Oh my God, this is a war, 100 years war. She heard her grandfather tell her when she was a child that the world should be full of magic, but powerful suppressors sealed everyone's potential, causing war to burn for hundreds of years. No one can use powerful magic to end all this, only the legendary time traveler can change history. Her palms suddenly felt hot, and a blue light emerged from them. Siying looked down and found a glowing rune on her wrist, like an ancient clock. What is this? She tried to concentrate. The runes lit up and time around her seemed to slow down. The soldier's movements became slower, and she could clearly see the trajectory of a drop of blood suspended in the air. Can I control time? Panic surged into her heart, and she felt a power stirring within her body, but it was suppressed by something, like a beast wrapped in iron chains. The suppressor, it sealed my magic. On the battlefield, a man who looked like a general shouted, "Advance. Use your last magic power to blast open their defenses." His voice was like thunder, and Siying retreated in fright. Just then, an arrow flew towards her. She instinctively raised her hand, the time runes flickered, the arrow stopped in mid-air, and then shattered into powder. I did it. But the joy was fleeting, and the shouts of killing around him were getting closer and closer. She can't stay here. Siying closed her eyes, recalled the bookshelves in the library, and concentrated her thoughts. Blue light surrounded her again, and the world was distorted again. Plop! She fell to the ground, and the familiar smell of books and ink hit her nostrils. Siying gasped and climbed up. The bookshelf had returned to its original state, as if nothing had happened. Just now, was that a dream? But the runes on his wrist were still glowing slightly, proving that everything was real. She touched her heart, and the bloody smell of the battlefield seemed to still linger on the tip of her nose. Did I really go to the past, and change history? No, it's impossible. I'm just a library assistant. The sound of footsteps came from the corridor, and Siying stood up straight in a hurry. A middle-aged woman walked in at the door, with silver hair tied up in a bun, wearing a pair of thin-rimmed glasses, and holding a thick ancient book in her hand. She is Li Juan, a senior scholar in the library, and everyone calls her the bookworm tutor. Siying. Why are you sweating profusely? Have you finished organizing the bookshelf? Li Juan's voice was gentle, but with sharp observation. She walked closer, her eyes fell on the glowing runes, and she narrowed her eyes. Is this the mark of bookshelf magic? Did you trigger it? Siying swallowed her saliva and nodded. Aunt Li Juan, I was sucked in just now. I went to the past battlefield, and there were soldiers fighting everywhere. I saw magic fireballs, and they stopped time. She spoke quickly and gestured with her hands, like an excited child or a frightened rabbit. Li Juan's expression changed. She took Siying's hand, walked to the bookshelf, and whispered, "Don't be loud, it's a taboo. Come, sit down, I tell you." They sat down on the old chairs in the corner, and Li Juan's voice was as low as a whisper. The bookshelves in this library are not ordinary wood. They are ancient portals that connect the past and the present. But only certain people can trigger it, those with time blood. For hundreds of years, magic has been sealed by suppressors. That thing is a legacy of ancient wars, embedded in everyone's soul, suppressing potential, and maintaining this endless war. Legend has it that only by removing the suppressor can time travelers intervene in history and broker a peace treaty. Siying's eyes widened, then I am that person. But I can't do anything. Just now on the battlefield, I felt that my power was blocked, as if there was an iron door blocking it. Her voice trembled, and a fear surged in her heart. If this is true, her life will be over. The library and the secure job were all in vain. Li Juan nodded with complicated eyes. Yes, your runes prove this. But it is very dangerous. The guardians of time regard interference as a taboo, and they will hunt you down. She took out a small crystal from her arms, which was as crystal clear as a drop of water. This is the preliminary unlocking key. I have studied it for many years and kept it hidden. Hold it, concentrate, and imagine the suppressor shattering. Siying hesitated and took the crystal. It feels cold to the touch, like holding a clear spring. She closed her eyes, and the cruelty of the battlefield appeared in her mind. The eyes of those soldiers were full of desperate struggle. Crush it. The crystal heated up, and a warm current rushed into the wrist. The runes lit up, and the chains in his body seemed to loosen a little. She opened her eyes, feeling a surge of power and a faint blue light flickering in the air. Wow, I can feel it. It feels like my body is a lot lighter. Li Juan smiled, but with worry. This is just the beginning. The suppressor is deeply rooted, and complete removal will require more steps. But now, you have the ability to explore. Siying, this mission is not a game, it will change everything, including yourself. She patted Siying on the shoulder. Remember, history is not a book, it is alive and will bite you back. Siying looked at the runes on her hand and felt confused. Curiosity scratched her like a cat's claws. What if I could go back and save those people? But fear also follows. What if things go wrong and history collapses? She took a deep breath and clenched her fists. Aunt Li Juan, I want to try. We can't let the war continue forever, right? Li Juan nodded, a hidden secret flashing in her eyes. Good boy. But start small first. Tomorrow, we will study how to stabilize your portal. She stood up, walked to the bookshelf, and stroked an old book. There are always surprises in the library at night, right? Siying followed behind, the echoes of the battlefield echoing in her mind. Outside the window, the sun sets, lengthening the shadow of the bookshelf. She knew that this was just the beginning and that a bigger adventure was waiting for her. As night fell, the lights of the library lit up the ancient vaults like fireflies. Siying was lying on the bed in her small apartment, staring at the cracks on the ceiling, with Li Juan's words still echoing in her mind. History will bite you back. She turned over, the runes on her wrists feeling slightly hot, like a restless pet. She tried to concentrate and imagine the power, but the suppressor was still working, and it felt like there was a fog in her head, and she couldn't grasp anything. Let's talk tomorrow. She murmured to herself, and finally fell into sleep. In her dream, there were endless battlefields and whirlpools of blue light. Early the next morning, as soon as the sun climbed onto the windowsill, Siying rushed into the library. The air was filled with the aroma of fresh coffee, and Li Juan was already waiting for her in the reading room at the back, holding a yellowed parchment book in her hand. You're here early, kid. Did you sleep well last night? Li Juan raised her head, with a hint of fatigue hidden in her smile, and her eyes behind her glasses were as sharp as an eagle. I sleep like a dead pig, but my brain can't stop. Siying panted and sat down, rubbing her temples. Aunt Li Juan, where do we start? What about the spar? I feel like my power is still stuck. I tried for a long time last night, but nothing happened. Li Juan nodded, took out the small crystal stone from the drawer, and placed it on the table. It shone like a dewdrop in the morning light. Removing the suppressor is not something that can be done overnight. It is like a parasite, rooted deep in the soul. Let's practice controlling time travel first, starting from a small area. Stand up, face the bookshelf, close your eyes and imagine a specific moment, such as when you were sorting the books yesterday. Siying took a deep breath and stood in front of the bookshelf. The wood feels rough, with the warmth of time. She closed her eyes and recalled yesterday's scene. The moment her fingers touched the spine of the book, dust danced in the sunlight. Imagine, the portal opens. The runes lit up, and blue light wrapped around the bookshelf like threads, but the vortex only flickered and then dissipated. She opened her eyes and stamped her foot in frustration. Failed. Why? Because the suppressor is blocking it. Li Juan walked closer and held her shoulders. Hold the crystal and feel it like a key, turning the lock inside your body. Imagine the chain breaking and power pouring out. Her voice was low, like an ancient spell. Siying held the spar, and the cold touch ran into her arms. She gritted her teeth, and the cruelty of the battlefield came to mind, the screams of the soldiers, the bloody air. Cut it off, I don't want to look at that anymore. A stream of heat exploded, like a volcano erupting. The veil of mist inside her body tore, she felt the shackles loosen and the runes shine brightly. The bookshelf trembled again, this time the vortex rotated steadily, the blue light as calm as water waves. It's done, she shouted excitedly, stepping inside. The world flashed and she was back in the library of yesterday. The sun shines on the bookshelf, everything is as before. But this time, she could feel the pulse of time, as rhythmic as a heartbeat. Interesting. She waved her hand gently, and the dust around her slowed down. She tried to move forward a few steps and time returned to normal. Basic time jump. Aunt Li Juan, I'm back. With a thought, she jumped back to the present. Li Juan smiled and patted her back. Good job. The suppressor part has been removed, and you can now jump short distances. But don't get too complacent, this is just scratching the surface. Fully unlocking requires more energy sources. Siying gasped and sat down, blushing with excitement. That's cool. But I can't handle this alone. I have to tell you that she is my best friend. We grew up together. She always said that she has some intuition, and maybe she can help. She took out her mobile phone and dialed Yushi's number. Hey, Yushi. Come to the library, there's something big going on. Half an hour later, there were rapid footsteps at the door. Yushi rushed in, with messy short hair, wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans, with her backpack slung over her shoulders. Siying. What did you say about time travel on the phone? Don't make trouble, I'm rushing to give a report. She is a college student, majoring in history. She always likes to tell anecdotes, but she never believes in magic. Siying pulled her to sit down, lowered her voice and told her everything about last night: bookshelf, battlefield, runes, suppressor. Yushi's eyes widened when she heard this, and she was dubious. Are you crazy? It sounds like you read too many novels last night. But when Siying raised her wrist, the runes lit up, and blue light reflected on her face. Yushi gasped. Is this true? Lijuan interjected, my child, do you have magic talent? Try to feel her power. Yushi hesitated and stretched out his hand to touch the rune. Suddenly, a green light appeared in her palm, wrapping around Siying's hand like a vine. Wow! What is this? She exclaimed, the green light flowing like a cool breeze, stabilizing the pulsation of the blue light. I always dreamed about these lights when I was a kid, but never took it seriously. Siying, is this my talent? Can it help you stabilize your jump? Yes. Just like an anchor. Lijuan nodded, approval flashing in her eyes. You two are a match made in heaven. Come and investigate the ancient books. The legend of the peace treaty is hidden in these books. The three of them gathered in front of a pile of yellowed ancient books. The air in the library became dull, and the musty smell of paper hit my nostrils. Siying opened a book called The Shackles of Time, and Yushi illuminated the page with green light. Lijuan pointed to a line of vague text, look here. The suppressor is not a natural product, but an ancient conspiracy. It was implanted by an organization called the Eternal Society to maintain the war and control magic resources. The peace treaty is the key. Only time travelers can trigger it, and it was signed at the turning point of the 100 Years' War. But the Guardians, those who claim to protect history, will block everything. Yushi frowned. Conspiracy? It sounds like a conspiracy theory. But if it can really end the war, why not try it? She turned to Siying, let's go to a small test together. For example, jump to the recent past and practice our skills. Siying's heartbeat quickened and her curiosity aroused again, but this time she was a little more cautious. Okay, but Aunt Lijuan said to observe historical nodes, those points that can change the direction and not touch them randomly. Lijuan nodded and warned, remember, time guardians are everywhere. They have their own travelers, guys like Ziyuan, who are ambitious and opposed to any intervention. If they are discovered, you will be in big trouble. Ziyuan? Sounds like a bad guy. Yushi chuckled and pulled Siying up. Let's go. Target, the skirmish outside the city last week, the miners' strike that almost turned into a riot. Siying held Yushi's hand tightly, and the spar heated up in her palm. The runes flickered, their thoughts concentrated, blue and green light intertwined, and the vortex swallowed the two of them. The world was twisted, the wind was roaring in my ears, and my stomach was churning. When they landed, it was already the mine outside the city last week. The air was filled with the choking smell of soot, and there were angry shouts and the muffled sound of sticks hitting in the distance. A group of miners surrounded the foreman, their faces black with coal and anger. Raise the salary. Otherwise, the machine will be smashed, the leading strong man yelled, holding the hammer high in his hand. Siying hid behind the cargo box, and Yushi whispered, look, at that point, if the foreman shoots, it will cause chaos. Sure enough, the foreman reached for the pistol on his waist, and the miners swarmed up, and the situation seemed to be out of control. I'll do it. Siying took a deep breath and concentrated. Time slowed down, and the foreman's finger slowly pulled the trigger. She stepped forward lightly, and green light came from Yushi, stabilizing her strength. Siying whispered, stop, think about your family. She did not touch him directly, but only breathed into the foreman's ear, injecting a sense of calm into the time rune. The foreman froze, lowering his pistol. Wait, you are right, let's sit down and talk. Time resumed and the miners stopped in surprise. The leading strong man blinked. Foreman, you, agree to talk. The scene eased, the two sides sat around, and the sound of negotiations could be heard faintly among the soot. Siying pulled Yushi back. It's done. But I didn't change it directly, I just pushed the node. Yushi hugged her excitedly. You are awesome. It feels like watching a movie, but we are the protagonists. With a thought, they jumped back to the present. The library bell rang just a few minutes later. Li Juan was waiting on the spot with a solemn expression. You are lucky and have not been targeted by the guardians. But be careful next time, Ziyuan's eyes are everywhere. They believe that history is immutable and intervention will destroy everything. Siying sat down and wiped her sweat. She was no longer just curious, the echoes of the battlefield and the roar of the mines made her feel the weight. Aunt Li Juan, I understand. This is not a game, it is a responsibility. Those people, they need peace, and I can't back down. Her voice was firm, and there was a new light in her eyes, changing from a girl to a guardian. Yushi held her hand, and the green light flickered slightly. Together, we sisters will become time thieves. Li Juan smiled, but glanced out the window. The setting sun lengthened the shadow, and a black shadow seemed to flash past. The prototype of the team has been formed, but there is still a long way to go. Rest, tomorrow we will find Danny, the survivor of the war. She has more clues. Siying nodded, feeling warm in her heart. Friendship is like green light, stabilizing her blue vortex. Outside, the wind blew through the leaves, bringing with it the faint echo of the distant war. She knew that the real adventure had just begun. The morning light shone into the arched window of the library, and Siying rubbed her sleepy eyes and pushed open the door. Last night's dream was filled with coal ash from the mines and the screams of death on the battlefield, which made her toss and turn and make her sleep restless. Yushi was already inside, leaning against the bookshelf, munching on a breakfast sandwich and humming a tune. Good morning, time hero. Aunt Li Juan said she would go find Danny today. I checked and found out that she lives in the old warrior district in the east of the city. That place is like a living fossil, with veterans with broken arms all over the street. Yushi handed over a cup of hot chocolate, the heat rising up with a sweet milky aroma. Li Juan walked out from the back row, wearing a gray cloak and the crystal stone on her waist. Let's go, children. Danny is not an easy person to meet. She has seen too much blood and is very defensive. But her clue is the key, about how the suppressor controls the war. The three of them left the library. The rumble of carriages and cries of sellers mingled with each other on the street, and the air was filled with the smell of fresh bread and horse manure. From a distance, the warrior district in the east of the city looks like a corner forgotten by time. Low stone houses are mottled, the walls are covered with vines, and occasionally there is a veteran on crutches, staring blankly into the distance. They knocked on an iron door. The yard behind the door was filled with old weapons, stained with rust. Danny appeared, a woman in her early 30s with neat short hair and a mechanical prosthetic left arm that made a slight buzzing of gears. She wore simple leather armor, a short sword hung on her waist, and her eyes were as sharp as a hawk. Li Juan? Why did you bring two little girls here? This is not a playground. Her voice was hoarse, like the wind blowing through the wilderness, with the aftertaste of gun smoke. Li Juan smiled and opened the door. Danny, they are my students. Siying triggered the bookshelf magic, and Yushi has a talent. You know, the legend of the peace treaty, we need your help. Danny glanced at Siying, her eyes stopped at the runes on her wrist, and she raised a brow. Timestamp? A rare item. But the war will not end easily, and those suppressors are not decorations. She turned around and entered the room, and the three of them followed. The room was dark, the walls were covered with maps and war records, and the air was filled with the bitter smell of herbs and old paper. Danny poured 3 cups of coarse tea, sat down and said, "Sit down and listen. I am a survivor of the battlefield 100 years ago. In that war, the magicians of the 2 empires bombarded each other, fireballs rained down, and the ground cracked open and swallowed people. But the suppressors made everything in vain, they were like invisible shackles, embedded in everyone's blood, suppressing the magic potential. Only during wartime, it loosened a little, allowing the soldiers to burst out with short-term strength and maintain endless tug-of-war. She knocked on her prosthetic limbs, and the gears turned. I lost this arm because I tried to resist. The suppressor is not a natural thing. It is a puppet of the Eternal Society. They hide in the darkness of history and rely on war to absorb the magic residue and turn it into their own nutrients. If you want to remove it, you have to find the source, the turning battlefield 100 years ago. There was a general named Kyle there. He was supposed to sign an armistice, but he was controlled by the Guardian and caused a massacre. Siying's heart beat faster when she heard it, and the teacup felt hot in her hands. So, if we go there and influence Kyle, we can resolve the conflict? But how? Will the Time Guardians keep an eye on it? Her voice trembled slightly, and the roar of the mine flashed through her mind, and the weight of changing her fate made her breathless. Danny sneered, "Target? They'll come sooner or later. I've heard about that guy from Ziyuan. He's an elite guardian who specializes in blocking portals. But if you have the runes, you can try it. My clue is the map dash." She pulled out a piece of yellowed parchment from the drawer with a red circle on it. This is the center of the Foggy Valley battle. Kyle's tent is at the bottom of the valley. Before it can affect him, the frontline conflict must be resolved. Yushi came closer, and green light emerged from his fingertips, illuminating the map. Cool. Let's work in groups of 3. I'll stabilize your jump, and Danny will give you tactical guidance. Siying, you're the main force. Danny hesitated and looked into Siying's eyes. Okay, I'll join. Over the years, I've been living like a walking zombie. For the sake of those dead brothers, I should give it a try. But remember, intervention has a price, history will bite back. The 3 of them shook hands. Danny's prosthetic limb was cold and hard, Yushi's palm was as warm as the spring breeze, and Siying's runes glowed slightly, like a blue oath. Their team was formed like this, and there seemed to be a condensed warmth in the air. In the afternoon, they returned to the library and Lijuan was ready. The portal is stable, but it was a high-risk area 100 years ago. Siying, remember my defensive spell, Shadow Lock Break, and imagine the blue light becoming a shield. Lijuan handed her a talisman, and the silver chain flashed. I'll stay here and conduct energy remotely. Siying nodded, holding the amulet tightly, and felt a warmth in her heart. She was no longer alone. The 3 of them stood in front of the bookshelf. Siying took a deep breath, the runes lit up, and blue light came in like a tide. Yushi's green light entwined, and Danny pressed the map. Concentrated in the Foggy Valley, dusk 100 years ago. The vortex swallowed them up, the world was distorted, and the sound of wind in their ears was like the roar of wild beasts. When he landed, his feet stepped on wet soil. The air was cold and biting, mixed with the stench of rust and scorched earth. In the distance, war drums roared and arrows roared across the sky. As its name suggests, Foggy Valley is filled with thick fog and visibility is less than 10 meters. The soldiers' shouts of killing came from the fog, like a chorus of ghosts. Spread out and find the front line. Danny whispered, her prosthetic limbs making a soft sound. They crawled forward, their knees covered with mud, sticky and cold to the touch. Yushi gasped, this fog is disgusting, it smells like mud. Suddenly, a group of patrols rushed out of the fog, their armors clashed with each other, and their spears shimmered. Enemy attack, the leading soldier yelled, pointing the tip of his spear directly at them. Siying's heart beat like a drum, she instinctively raised her hands, and the time runes flashed. The world slowed down, the soldiers' movements were like clay sculptures, she took a few steps, and Yushi's green light stabilized the rhythm. Push them off course. Danny commanded. Siying nodded and whispered in the soldiers' ears, retreat, there is an ambush in the fog. Time resumed, the soldiers were stunned, turned around and retreated into the fog. I heard there's an ambush. Let's go. The conflict was resolved, they breathed a sigh of relief and continued deeper. The tent area at the bottom of the valley is looming, with swaying torches illuminating General Kyle's flag, a roaring lion. Siying and the others hid behind the rocks and observed. Kyle was tall and mighty, with a beard like wire. He held a sword in his hand and roared at his men, "Attack! Burn the other side!" His eyes were red, as if controlled by something, and there was a faint black mist in the air, traces of a suppressor. "I'll influence him," Siying whispered, and Yushi held her hand. "Be careful, I'll give you a blessing." Green light poured in like a vine, and Siying felt a surge of power. She concentrated, and the time ripples spread, slowing down around Kyle. She slipped into the tent, the heat from the brazier hit her face, and the smell of smoke stung her nose. "General, think about your soldiers. Their families are still waiting." She did not touch it directly, but injected a trace of blue light into his wine glass. Kyle paused, his eyes flashing with confusion. "Stop, truce. Maybe, negotiation is not a bad thing," he murmured, and his subordinates looked at him in surprise as he ordered to retreat. "It's done," Siying whispered excitedly, pulling her companion back. But at this moment, the air condensed, and a black shadow emerged from the fog. The man landed, his robes flowing, his face handsome but cold, and his eyes shining with silver. "Time thieves, you broke the rules." Ziyuan's voice was like cold wind, the talisman in his hand lit up, and the black light shot towards the bookshelf door like a chain. No, it was their return whirlpool. The portal began to twist and creak and crack. "Blocked." Ziyuan sneered, the chains were entangled, and Wugu's time pulse was disrupted. The soldiers' shouts became distorted, as if history was being torn apart. Danny drew her sword. "Damn it, Guardian." Yushi's green light burst out, blocking the blow, but the black light was like a poisonous snake, approaching Siying. You can't change this." Ziyuan approached, his silver eyes locked on her. "History is an iron law, peace? That's an illusion." Fear was like ice water on top of her head, and Siying's legs became weak. "The door is about to close, they are trapped here, and the flames of war will engulf everything." "No. I can't retreat." The inner monologue was like lightning, the eyes of those soldiers, Danny's prosthetic limbs, Yushi's trust, the morality of intervention. "If you don't try, peace will always be empty talk." She gritted her teeth and held the amulet tightly. "Shadow chain break." Lijuan's voice echoed in her head, and the blue light turned into a shield, blocking the black chain. Siying broke through her fear and used precise thoughts. "Go back to the library, now." Green light intertwined with blue light, covered by Danny's sword light, and they jumped into the remaining vortex. The world flashed, and when they landed, they fell to the library floor, breathing like bellows. Lijuan rushed over and helped Siying up. "You did it." The defensive spell took effect. The portal closed and the lingering blue light dissipated. Ziyuan's shadow did not follow, but his warning echoed in his ears. Danny wiped her sweat, her prosthetic limb buzzing. "The first time we cooperated, we met a big fish." Kyle's transformation, local conflicts have been resolved, and history will shift slightly. Yushi hugged Siying and said, "You are so brave. I thought it was over just now." The three looked at each other and smiled, and the bond of the team was like a torch in the foggy valley, illuminating each other. Siying sat down against the bookshelf, the rune on her wrist feeling slightly hot. "There were waves in my heart. The morality of intervention is like a double-edged sword, saving people may lead to chaos." But looking at Danny's firm eyes and Yushi's green light, she was determined, the pursuit of peace was worth all the risks. Lijuan handed over the water glass. "Get some rest. But Ziyuan is targeting you. Next, we have to find the source of the suppressor. The shadow of the Eternal Society is approaching." Outside the window, night falls, and thunder can be heard faintly in the distance, like the whisper of history. They knew that this adventure had just reached its climax. The vault of the library casts a long shadow in the night, and the thunder was like a distant war drum, beating intermittently on the window glass. Siying leaned on the old wooden chair, holding the glass of still warm water in her hand, with Wu Gu's murderous cry and Ziyuan's silver-cold eyes echoing in her mind. Yushi curled up on the carpet next to her, green light flickering from her fingertips, as if comforting everyone. Danny stood, her prosthetic limbs humming slightly, her eyes scanning the three of them, as if assessing the quality of this temporary team. Rest? War doesn't give people a chance to breathe. Danny whispered, her voice as rough as gravel, the source of the suppressor must be dug from the beginning. Lijuan, are there any clues in your ancient books? Lijuan nodded and pulled out a thick iron-edged book from the depths of the bookshelf. The cover was engraved with runes and felt like a cold iron plate. She opened the page, and under the candlelight, the ink stains were as bright as blood. It is written here that the suppressor originated from the Shadow Source War 300 years ago. At that time, magicians from the two empires joined forces to create it. It was originally intended to seal the elemental power of chaos. Who knew that eternity would steal the core and turn it into a control tool? It was implanted in everyone's soul and nourished by the war. The source was deep in the palace, in a secret hall called the Palace of Eternity. Only there can the key to complete removal be found, but according to legend, the peace treaty was signed after that war. Siying's heart tightened upon hearing this, and the water glass felt hot in her hand. 300 years ago. Then we have to jump so far. Ziyuan almost sealed the door last time. Wouldn't it be like throwing himself into a trap this time? Her voice trembled slightly, the mist of the foggy valley flashed through her mind, and the suffocating feeling of being hunted was still stuck in her throat. Danny turned around, and the prosthetic leg made a crisp resounding sound as it hit the floor. She knelt down and stared into Siying's eyes, her tones sounding like a veteran whispering in the trenches. Listen, little girl. On the battlefield 100 years ago, I saw with my own eyes how suppressors can destroy people. That day, my brothers and I charged, and the magic fireball was supposed to explode the enemy formation, but the suppressor flashed, and our strength seemed to be drained and we became living targets. My arm was blown away by the gunfire right there. It was bloody, and the pain was like burning my heart. When I woke up, surrounded by piles of corpses, the air is full of rotten meat and the smell of scorched earth. I swear, if I have the chance, I will smash that damn thing. Danny's eyes flashed with pain, but quickly turned to determination. You have the runes, and we have the team. What are you afraid of? No matter how dark the shadow of history is, someone has to break it. Think of those dead faces, they are waiting for you. Siying swallowed her saliva, and Danny's words were like a punch, awakening her inner hesitation. The screams of those battlefields seemed to be ringing in my ears again. She nodded and clenched her fists. Okay, I'll go. For them and for us. Yushi patted her shoulder and smiled. Enemies. Sisters are going into battle, who is afraid of whom? Aunt Lijuan, can you give us your blessing? Lijuan smiled, with a trace of unnoticeable sadness hidden in her eyes. Of course. But the palace is a snake cave, disguised as a messenger, implanting the concept of peace. Siying, you take the lead. Remember, don't touch the key people's minds. She handed over 3 disguise badges. Silver light flashed. This allows you to integrate. The portal opens. 300 years ago, the dusk of the palace after the Shadow Source War. In front of the bookshelf, blue and green light intertwined. Danny held down the map, her prosthetic limb as steady as a rock. The whirlpool swallowed them up, the world twisted into a patch of light and shadow, and the sound of wind in their ears was like a ghost crying. When I landed, my feet touched the smooth marble floor, and the air was filled with the sweet smell of incense and candles. Surrounded by the gorgeous palace corridor, the golden curtains hang down, the walls are covered with portraits, and the faces of the nobles are as cold as stone. The melodious sound of a piano could be heard in the distance, mixed with whispers and the crisp sound of wine glasses clinking. It's done, this is the imperial palace. Yushi whispered. The green light faded, and she touched the silk robe on her body. The disguise was in effect, she looked like a palace maid. Siying took a deep breath, and the badge transformed her into the appearance of a diplomatic envoy, wearing a dark blue robe, a sword at her waist, and a scarf covering half of her face. Let's act. Target, Diplomatic Hall, where the envoys are negotiating a truce. They sneaked along the corridor, their steps as light as cats, and their touch was the soft down of the carpet. Palace guards patrolled, armor flashed, and there was a faint buzz of magical remnants in the air, the aftermath of the war. The entrance to the diplomatic hall is heavily guarded. Dany whispered, "I'll go back and create a distraction." She slipped into the side door, her prosthetic limb making no sound. Siying and Yushi stepped forward, their badges flashing, and the guards gave way. "Your Excellency, please." The candlelight flickered in the hall, and diplomats were seated at both ends of the long table. The map was spread out, and the smell of ink was fragrant. A fat envoy was roaring, "The Empire will not tolerate it. Continue the war until the other side kneels." His eyes were red, and the black mist of the suppressor was vaguely lingering. With her heart beating fast, Siying slipped into the crowd and approached the messenger. She concentrated, the runes whispered, and the ripples of time spread like water waves. The movement around her was slow, and she whispered in the messenger's ear, "Imagine a peaceful field, where children are laughing instead of crying. A treaty is not a weakness, but a strength." Blue light poured into his wine glass, and the messenger was stunned, and confusion flashed in his eyes. "Perhaps, negotiation can bring long-term peace," he murmured, and the atmosphere in the hall relaxed. The messenger on the other side nodded, "Agree, sign the treaty and end this madness." The idea of peace was quietly implanted like a seed. It went so well. Yushi chuckled, and Siying stepped back. But at this moment, the air outside the hall condensed, and a black shadow flashed. Ziyuan landed, hunting in robes, with silver eyes like knives. "We meet again, thief. This time, you can't escape." He raised his hand, and the black light came out like a whip, hitting the diplomatic table directly. The map ignited, the flames shot up, and screams filled the hall. The guard drew his sword, chaos broke out, the black light chain sealed the exit, and the pulse of time was distorted, as if the palace was collapsing. "Damn it!" Dany rushed out from the side door, her prosthetic sword flashing, blocking a blow. But the black light was like a wave, forcing her to retreat. "Siying, portal." Siying's mind buzzed, and panic surged. If it failed, the peace treaty would be ruined, and history would return to war. She gritted her teeth and her inner monologue was like lightning, "Don't panic, trust them." Li Juan's training, Dany's courage, Yushi's green light, I am not alone. The runes lit up, and a new power surged out, time rewind. As soon as she thought, the surrounding scenery regressed, like a scroll in rewind. The flames retreated, the black light retracted, Ziyuan's movements were reversed, and he backed away in shock. "What?" "Backtracking, did you unlock this move?" The hall returned to its original state, and the messengers blinked blankly, as if nothing had happened. But Ziyuan was unwilling to give in, and the silver light burst out, heading towards Siying. "Impossible." The black chain wrapped around her. She retraced her steps and started again. The chain shattered into points of light. Yushi seized the opportunity, and green light wrapped around a wall in the hall like vines. There was a magic seal hidden there, and the runes flickered. "I feel it." Li Juan's secret. Green light was injected, the seal shattered, and a light curtain emerged, projecting an image, young Li Juan, with silver hair not yet white, holding a blue rune, traveling on the ancient battlefield. "I was one of the first time travelers who tried to remove the suppressor, but eternity would hunt me down. I faked my death and secluded myself, just to wait for a successor like you." Li Juan's voice in the image trembled, "Child, don't make the same mistake I did, trust your team." Siying was stunned, her heart surged like a wave. Li Juan had hidden so much? She is a mentor, but she has her own scars. Fear and betrayal were intertwined, but looking at Yushi's firm eyes and Dany's protective posture, she took a deep breath. "Li Juan, thank you." The backtracking power stabilized, and she shouted, Yushi, secure the door. Danny, cover. Green light and blue light blended, Danny's sword light forced Ziyuan back for an instant, and they jumped into the whirlpool. Ziyuan roared, this is not the end. The Eternal Society will swallow you up. The world flashed and I landed in the library. The candlelight was still flickering. Only a few minutes had passed. Li Juan stood there, her face pale, and her image had disappeared. You saw it. Her voice was low, guilt flashing in her eyes. I wanted to protect you and prevent history from repeating itself. But now, the secret is revealed and we are stronger. Siying gasped and stood up, wiping her sweat. The internal struggle is like a storm, trust? Li Juan's concealment made her shaken, but the image also showed her mentor's sacrifice. Danny patted her shoulder, little girl, who doesn't have secrets on the battlefield? But we are still here, and that's enough. Yushi hugged her, yes, Aunt Li Juan is our backing. What you said back just now was so handsome. Siying smiled, feeling that the weight on her shoulders was lighter. She is no longer the panicked assistant, but a leader who can take the lead. Thank you all. Li Juan, your past has made me understand, intervention is not a matter of one person, but of the team. Let's continue to dig for the source of the suppressor. There is always light that can break through the shadow of the Eternal Society. Li Juan nodded, with a hint of warmth in her eyes. Good boy. The seeds of the palace have been sown, and the trajectory of the peace treaty is changing. But Ziyuan is keeping a close eye. The next step is the turning point of the battle in Foggy Valley. We must rush before the Guardians. Outside the window, the thunder gradually stopped, and the night wind blew in, bringing the faint sound of the distant palace. They looked at each other, and the bond of the team was like a newly unlocked rune, shining with the light of moving forward. The candlelight in the library swayed in the night wind, reflecting Li Juan's pale face. She took a deep breath, her silver hair trembling slightly under the light, like wisps of old memories. Children, the Battle of Foggy Valley is a key turning point. The nodes there can connect to the branches of the suppressor. But before taking action, I have to tell you a secret, about Siying. Li Juan's voice was low, as if a stone that had been suppressed for many years had finally rolled away. She turned to Siying, complex emotions flashing in her eyes. Your ancestor was not an ordinary person. He participated in the creation of the suppressor. Siying was stunned, and the water glass in her hand almost slipped. A few drops of hot water spilled out, burning the skin and refreshing it like acupuncture. What? My ancestors? Her mind buzzed, and old photos of her grandfather appeared, the old man who always loved telling war stories, and there was some sadness in his eyes that she had never understood. Yushi sat up straight, green light flickered faintly from her fingertips. Aunt Li Juan, tell me in detail. What does this have to do with us? Li Juan pulled out a yellowed family tree book from the bookshelf. The cover was engraved with the emblem of the Siying family, a blue rune, which was exactly the same as the one on her wrist. She opened the page and pointed at a blurry line of ink. 300 years ago, after the Shadow Source War, your great-grandfather was the chief magician of the empire. He originally intended to create a suppressor to seal the elements of chaos and end the war. But eternity would seep in, twisting his design and turning it into an eternal shackle. Your bloodline carries that regret, the talent of time, which was inherited from him. I hid it because I was afraid that you would bear too much. But now, uncover it so that you can truly control the power. Siying's throat tightened, and her chest felt like it had been hit by a hammer. The inner monologue came flooding in, so it turns out that I didn't trigger the bookshelf accidentally, but it was fate? The mistakes of my ancestors are weighing on my shoulders, is this fair? She rubbed her wrist, and the runes felt hot, as if in response. So, I am the Hatoner. Grandpa never mentioned this. He only said that the family has an ancient curse. Her voice trembled, mixed with anger and confusion. Danny leaned against the wall, her prosthetic arm buzzing. Little girl, history always likes to bite future generations. But think about it, without this blood, how can you save those people? Don't doubt yourself, take action. Yushi held Siying's hand, and the green light poured into her palm like a warm current. That's right, sister. We are a team, and your past is our weapon. Come on, let's celebrate, the big reveal of your life. She smiled and raised her water glass, trying to lighten the atmosphere. Siying forced a smile, and the storm in her heart subsided for a moment. She took a deep breath. Okay, Aunt Lijuan, thank you for saying it. Now, the medium-sized battle in Foggy Valley, is that the node of the suppressor branch? If we sneak into the enemy camp and remove it, we can postpone the expansion of the war. Her tone became firm, and the shadow of a leader was faintly revealed from the self-doubting girl. Lijuan nodded and spread out the map. Exactly. On the east wing of Foggy Valley, there is a medium-sized conflict. The Imperial Army confronts the rebels. The suppressor node is hidden in the magic tower of the enemy camp, like a pulse, pumping the black mist to nourish the war. Siying, you lead, use your blood to sense the node. Yushi stabilizes the portal, and Danny is responsible for tactics. She handed over a strengthening crystal. This can amplify your timing skills, but be careful, Ziyuan's traps are everywhere. It was late at night, and the three of them left the library. The fog on the street was like a ghost. Siying walked in the front, her step steady, and the shadow of her ancestors echoed in her mind. He wanted to bring peace, but he planted the seeds of disaster. I can't make the same mistake again. The bookshelf portal opened at the end of the alley, blue and green light intertwined, and the vortex swallowed them up. The world was distorted, the wind sounded in my ears like a beast roaring, and my stomach was churning. When he landed, his feet stepped on the wet mud of the Foggy Valley. The air was bitingly cold, mixed with the stench of rust and scorched earth. In the distance, war drums roared, and torches flickered to illuminate the enemy camp. There were many tents, soldiers patrolled, the magic tower stood like a black shadow, and the black mist shrouded the top of the tower, pulsing like a living thing. Spread the action. Siying commanded in a low voice, her voice lowered to a whisper. Danny, you go around the left wing to explore the path. Yushi, follow me and go straight into the middle. I sense the node. There is a blue light vein at the base of the tower. Her runes were hot and her blood was awakened, allowing her to feel the rhythm of the suppressor, as synchronized as a heartbeat. Danny nodded, her prosthetic limbs made a soft sound, and she slipped into the fog. Remember my signal, 3 bird calls, retreat. Yushi followed Siying closely, the green light faintly protecting her. Be careful, this fog smells like mud mixed with poison. They crawled forward, their knees covered with slimy mud, as cold as snake scales to the touch. At the edge of the enemy camp, the guards' footsteps were clanging, and the heat from the brazier hit their faces. Siying concentrated her mind, the runes whispered, and the ripples of time spread. The surroundings moved slowly, and they passed through like ghosts. The base of the tower is right in front of you, the black mist stretches out like tentacles, and the air buzzes like invisible shackles. This is it. Siying whispered, reaching out to touch the wall of the tower. Blue light is injected from the fingertips, the blood resonates, and the node is exposed, a black crystal embedded in the stone, pulsating with eerie energy. Smash it. Yushi whispered excitedly, green light wrapped around Siying's arm, giving strength. But the moment the crystal shattered, the air froze. The black mist exploded on the top of the tower, and Ziyuan emerged from the mist, wearing hunting robes and silver eyes like knives. Welcome to my trap, descendants of the Redeemer. He sneered, the black talisman in his hand lit up, and the chain whipped out like a whip, hitting the base of the tower. The ground trembled, and the mist turned into a cage, sealing the surrounding space. The soldiers rushed out of the tents, shouting like a tide of killing, invaders. Kill! The flames of war were ignited, arrows roared, fireballs exploded in the air, and the heat wave was scorching. Siying's heart beat like a drum, and panic surged in her. Trap! We've fallen into a trap. Self-doubt arose in my heart. Can my blood really work? Will the mistakes of our ancestors ruin everyone? But Dany's bird call signal sounded, and she rushed from the left wing. The prosthetic sword flashed and cut off several chains. Don't be stunned. The weak point of the enemy camp is the logistics tent. If you burn them, you will be in chaos. Her tactical wisdom was like the intuition of a veteran, and her voice cut through the chaos. Yushi pushed Siying away. I'll block it. Green light, explode. She raised her hand, and green light exploded like vines, wrapping around black chains and stabilizing the door. But there was a flash of silver light in Ziyuan, the black fog came back, and the green light dimmed. Your talent is too young. Yushi gritted her teeth and her heart sank. We can't let anything happen to the sisters. She concentrated all her energy and turned the green light into a shield, blocking the wave of fireballs. The energy backfired like fire burning her meridians. Her face turned pale, and the green light shattered. Siying, leave quickly, I can't hold on anymore. She sacrificed a small part of her talent and let the green light temporarily seal the black fog at the top of the tower, giving everyone a breather. Yushi! Siying screamed, tears blurring her vision. Seeing her best friend fall to the ground, the afterglow of the green light dissipating, her heart felt like a knife. Sacrifice, for me? The regrets of our ancestors cannot be repeated here. Anger ignited self-doubt, she held the spar tightly, and the runes shone brightly. New skill awakens, time delay. The world not only slowed down, it stretched like a stalemate, and she felt a pulsating grip. Dany, I listen to you. Logistics tent. Siying shouted, and with a thought, she delayed the soldiers' movements and made the arrows float in midair. She pulled Yushi up, Dany covered her, and the three of them rushed to the rear. The enemy camp was in chaos, fireballs exploded with delay, and the soldiers were as slow as a drunkard. Dany's prosthetic arm cuts through the ropes, the tent bursts into flames, smoke fills the air, and chaos intensifies. Now, Node. Siying turned around and locked the black crystal with her delay technique. Time stretched out around her, giving her plenty of room to smash it. The black crystal shattered, the suppressor nodes disintegrated, and the black mist dissipated like smoke. The pulse of the battlefield weakened, the magical fire of the soldiers dimmed, and the conflict was suspended. The rebels retreated, the imperial army hesitated, and the expansion of the war was blocked. Ziyuan roared, silver light burst out, approaching. You thought this was the end? But the delayed ripples spread, and his movements were half a beat slower. Siying commanded calmly, Dany, side attack. Yushi, use the remaining green light to open the door. Dany turned her prosthetic limb and her tactics were precise. She used the blind spot of smoke to force the guards back with the light of her sword. Yushi stood up weakly, and the remaining green light was like a thin thread, stabilizing the whirlpool. Sisters, I'm fine, it's just a small loss. The three of them jumped in, the world was distorted, and Ziyuan's chain passed by and shattered into points of light. When they landed in the library, Lijuan rushed forward and supported Yushi. Child, part of your talent, was sacrificed. Yushi gasped and smiled, it was worth it. At least the battle has slowed down and history has turned a corner. Dany wiped her sweat, her prosthetic limbs were covered with mud. Little girl, your leadership is good. Your delay skills are amazing. Siying knelt down and hugged Yushi, tears falling from her eyes. The inner transformation was like dawn, self-doubt disappeared, crawling out of fear. She understood the weight of sacrifice, not a burden, but the fire to move forward. Thank you. I will correct the mistakes of my ancestors. As a team, nothing can be overcome. Her voice was firm, and her confidence shone like blue light. Lijuan nodded, with a hint of pride in her eyes. The node has been removed, and the expansion of the war has been suspended. But the core of the Eternal Society is still there. The decisive point of the battle in Foggy Valley, Ziyuan will be even more ruthless. Next, we will strengthen training. Outside the window, the fog dispersed and the stars fell. They looked at each other, their emotions intertwined like vines. After the crisis, the seeds of growth quietly took root. The starlight in the library was still shining on the windowsill. Siying rubbed her sore wrist, the remaining warmth of the runes pulsing like a heartbeat. As soon as Lijuan finished speaking, Yushi bounced up from the carpet. Although the green light was dimmed, it still flickered tenaciously. Training? Aunt Lijuan, don't be so pretentious. At the decisive battle point in Wugu, that's the heart of the suppressor, right? We have to hurry, that guy from Ziyuan must be sharpening his sword. She patted Siying on the shoulder, her tone full of Sister Tao's encouragement. Your delaying skills just now were amazing, now work harder, let's smash that core. Danny leaned against the bookshelf, tapping her prosthetic leg lightly on the floor, making a rhythmic hum. Yes, little girls. I can smell the war clearly. Once that node is broken, history will be like a breathless beast, unable to breathe. But the core era is the peak of the Battle of Foggy Valley, the decisive battle 300 years ago. The elites of the two empires came together, and magic erupted like a volcano. Siying, your blood will guide you, but don't be too strong. Her eyes were sharp, but there was a rare tenderness, like a veteran imparting his experience in the trenches. Siying nodded, feeling warm in her heart. From a library assistant to this point, the road has been bumpy, the blood of the battlefield, Yushi's sacrifice, the shadow of her ancestors. But now, she feels like a tree, with roots that are deeply rooted. Okay, let's practice. Aunt Lijuan, how do you use the strengthening crystal? Lijuan handed over the crystal. The silver light was like water. Hold it tightly and imagine that the past and the present overlap. Your fusion ability is about to awaken, that will allow you to see multiple nodes clearly and intervene like a god. But remember, the price is mental load, don't let it swallow you up. Night training is like a small battle. Siying concentrated in front of the bookshelf, the blue light blended with the crystal. She tried to open the small door, and her vision flickered. The library was superimposed with the phantom of the old battlefield, and the dust was mixed with the whistling of arrows. Yushi's green light stabilized the edge, and Danny simulated an attack, with the prosthetic sword approaching. Quick! Fusion vision! Lijuan shouted. Siying gritted her teeth, her mind buzzing. The faces of the soldiers in the past overlapped with the current bookshelf. She felt the veins of time, like an invisible network. It's done, I can see the nodes. Sweat slid down her forehead, and she stopped panting, but my head hurts like a split. Is it enough? Lijuan nodded, her face solemn. Enough. The decisive battle point in Foggy Bottom, at dusk, the Empire and the rebel leaders are facing off. There are 3 key nodes there, the East Wing General, the South Bank Mage, and the North Camp Envoy. Their decisions determine life and death. Danny spread out the map, Siying, you have to intervene with the leader, Yushi holds the door, and I will protect the wings. Lijuan, are you sitting in the rear? Lijuan hesitated, her silver hair covering half of her face. No, I will follow this time. The core is too dangerous, and my secret, may be a clue. They looked at each other, and there was a nervous understanding in the air. The bookshelf glowed with blue and green light, and the vortex swallowed 4 people like a giant beast opening its mouth. The world is twisted, the wind is like a galloping horse, and my stomach is churning. When he landed, his feet stepped on the bloody mud of the Foggy Valley. The air was as hot as a furnace, mixed with the stench of burnt flesh and magic residue. The fog at dusk is like blood-stained, and the battlefield in the distance is like a picture of hell. Soldiers rush like a swarm of ants, magic fireballs pierce the sky, exploding dirt and broken limbs. War drums roared loudly, and arrows rained down like black clouds. The Imperial General on the East Wing rode high on his war horse and roared, "Advance! Burn out the rebels!" The mage from the South Bank chanted, and black mist exploded from the tip of his staff, swallowing the front line. The envoy from the North Camp hesitated in the tent, and the pen tip on the map trembled. The node. I saw it. Siying whispered, the crystal became hot, and her vision split. 3 battlefields overlapped in front of her, like multiple screens. She took a deep breath, and the blue light stretched like a silk thread. Yushi, give me blessings. Danny, protect me. Yushi nodded, and the green light wrapped around her arm. Sisters, rush. Your blood is responding. Danny's prosthetic limb buzzed, and the sword flashed. There is an ambush on the left wing, follow closely. They rushed into the battlefield, mud splashed up, and it felt sticky like plasma. Siying's thoughts moved, and the ripples of time spread. Her figure was like a ghostly clone. She arrived at the east wing in an instant, and the horses neighed in her ears. She whispered in the general's ear, "Stop, think about your heirs, the flames of war will burn everything." Blue light poured into the saddle, the general was stunned, and the horse retreated. The whole army, wait and see. Wait for news from the messenger. The node on the east wing eased, and the charge stalled. In a blink of an eye, she reached the south bank again. The mage's singing was like thunder, and the black mist blew into her face and choked her nose. Siying concentrated and activated the delay technique. The surroundings were as slow as a stalemate. She sneaked closer. "Mr. Master, your magic is supposed to heal, not destroy. The suppressor is controlling you, wake up." Blue light penetrated the core of the staff, confusion flashed in the mage's eyes, and the black mist dissipated. "I was wrong. Turn to defense and protect the wounded." The node on the south bank turned, the rain of fireballs stopped, and the battle line stabilized. Finally, in the baying tent, ink dripped from the tip of the messenger's pen, and sweat mixed with blood. Siying appeared, and the fusion of her vision made her feel the tide of his fear. "Sign the treaty, peace is not surrender, but rebirth." She injected blue light, and the messenger nodded, "Send the order." Armistice negotiations. The three nodes were connected, the battlefield cries of killing faded, the soldiers stopped in confusion, and there were faint gasps and whispers in the mist. Siying gasped and retreated. "It's done, they are turning to peace." But the joy was fleeting. The air condensed, and black mist surged in like a tide. Ziyuan jumped down from the top of the valley, his robe hunting, and his whole body was filled with silver light. Behind the scenes, dozens of guardians appeared. Their black robes were like shadows, their talismans were all bright, and their chains were like nets, blocking the entrance of the valley. "Stupid thief, this is the core. Do you think you can touch the heart of the suppressor?" Ziyuan sneered, his silver eyes locked on Siying. "Guardians of the Eternal Society, assemble. Seal the time pulse and destroy the interveners." The guardians chanted, black light erupted, the ripples of time were distorted, and the battlefield was like a whirlpool inverted. The soldiers who had slowed down charged again, the fireball rekindled, and the arrows flew back counterclockwise. The valley pulsed like a giant beast awakening, the suppressor core humming in the valley floor tower, spewing black mist to nourish the chaos. "Damn it, block all lines." Danny yelled, her prosthetic limb blocked a black chain, and sparks flew everywhere. "Siying, the core tower is at the bottom of the valley, but this network is blocking the way." Yushi's green light exploded, and vines entangled several chains. "I hold on to the edge, but there are many of them." "Aunt Lijuan, now." Lijuan's silver hair was flying. She took off her cloak, revealing the hidden blue robe, and there was an ancient timepiece on her waist, her legacy rune. "Children, here I come." She jumped forward, with a wave of blue light, opening a gap. "My secret, I was a traitor to the Eternal Society and stole the core blueprint. But in order to exchange for this clue, I have to expose, the core has a weakness. Siying's bloodline can melt it, but you need to integrate your vision and face the mistakes of your ancestors." The guardians exclaimed, "Traitor Lijuan. You are still alive." Black chains poured down like rain, and Lijuan's blue light shield shattered. She gritted her teeth. "Siying, look at me. Imagine the face of your ancestor, merging the past and the present." The black light hit her shoulder, staining her blue robe with blood. She fell to the ground and growled, "Go, the blueprint flashed in your mind." Siying's heart was like a knife, and Lijuan's sacrifice burned her heart like fire. The mentor's secret turned out to be so heavy. As she rushed forward, the crystals resonated with the runes, and her vision collapsed and reorganized. The figures of her past ancestors emerged. The chief magician looked regretfully at the birth of the suppressor. The current battlefield was superimposed, and the faces of the leaders were as clear as lines on the palm of a hand. Fusion, start. Siying shouted. The blue light was like an exploding galaxy, and the time vision merged. Not only did she intervene, she could also predict the consequences, as accurately as an oracle. The Guardian network was shaken, and Ziyuan's silver eyes narrowed. Impossible. Advanced fusion, your descendant, have destroyed the iron law. He took action himself and whipped out the silver whip. Siying turned sideways, and the fused vision allowed her to predict the trajectory. With a ripple on her backhand, the whip shattered with delay. She acted simultaneously like a clone. She protected Li Juan for a moment, and the blue light healed the wound. Auntie, hold on. Your blueprint. I saw it. The core weakness is in the crystal on the top of the tower. Danny took the opportunity to side attack and cut off the chain with her prosthetic limb. Good job, little one. Girl. Yushi, open the way. The remnants of Yushi's green light burst out, and the vines tore open the net. Sisters, bottom. But my talent is about to run out. She looked pale, but smiled and pushed Siying. Go smash it, Danny, and I will block it. Siying's heart was churning. The journey was like a dream, from the trigger of curiosity to the current tenacity. Yushi's sacrifice, Danny's courage, and Li Juan's secret made her transform from a girl. We can't let them go to waste. She jumped into the valley bottom, mud splashed up, and the tower buzzed like a beating heart. The crystal on the top of the tower pulses, and the black mist sprays thinly. Under the fusion vision, she saw the context clearly. The mistakes of her ancestors were like threads, pulling everything together. Break it. The blue light shot in like an arrow, crystal cracks spread, the core of the suppressor trembled, and the black mist dissipated like smoke. The pulse of the battlefield weakens, the shouts of leaders turn to whispers of negotiation, and the seeds of a peace treaty take root. But Ziyuan was unwilling to give in. The silver light gathered into a spear and pierced Siying's heart. It's over. She turned around, the fusion ripples spread, and the spear was delayed into powder. No, this is the beginning. The Guardian network collapsed, and Ziyuan retreated into the black mist. I will remember this account. His figure disappeared, leaving a warning echo. The four of them met, and Li Juan was helped up, with blood on her shoulders. My child, you did it, the core is cracked, and history is turning. Yushi hugged Siying and gasped, super handsome. But dizzy, we won half the game. Danny patted the prosthetic limb. Little girl, I can see your transformation. If the team does not break up, the war will break up. Siying smiled, her vision gradually narrowed, and she felt exhausted. But my heart is as tough as steel. This midpoint climax is not the end. They jumped into the remaining portal, the world was distorted, and the sound of wind in their ears faded. Facing the candlelight in the library, Li Juan whispered, rest, but the counterattack of the Eternal Society has just arrived. Outside the window, the starlight was still there, and the lingering sounds of the battlefield were faint, indicating an even bigger storm. The candlelight in the library swayed in the starlight, and the remaining warmth still lingered in the air, like the heat wave on the battlefield that refused to dissipate. Siying slid down and leaned against the bookshelf, her head buzzing, and the edges of her vision were still slightly distorted by the aftereffects of the fused vision. Yushi collapsed on the carpet next to her, with only sporadic flashes of green light left. She gasped and said with a smile, oh, I had a lot of fun in Foggy Valley this time. Siying, your clone technique is like a split-screen game, so cool. Danny wiped the mud on her prosthetic limbs, and the buzzing sound was as low as her hum. He is handsome, but Ziyuan's silver eyes are gone. Will Eternal give up? Li Juan, how is the injury on your shoulder? Li Juan held her shoulders, and the blood on her blue robe had dried to dark red. She shook her head, and a few strands of her silver hair were scattered. It's a minor injury, just rest. But children, don't relax. The core of the suppressor is cracked, and the pulse of war is weakened, but the conspiracy of the Eternal Society is deep. They will not let the peace treaty be signed easily. She turned to Siying, her eyes as complicated as the wrinkles of an old book, especially you, Siying. Your bloodline. I should have made it clear earlier. Siying's heart tightened, the blueprint of the valley just now still echoed in her mind, like the whispers of her ancestors. Aunt Lijuan, what do you mean? The blueprint you talked about in the foggy valley, I saw my great-grandfather's face, but he was just the creator. What else is left unsaid? Her voice trembled slightly, and the runes on her wrist were faintly hot, as if urging the truth. Lijuan took a deep breath and took out an ancient jade pendant from her arms. The surface was engraved with fine runes and felt as cool as autumn water. She handed it to Siying. Hold it, and your blood will respond. I stole this jade pendant from the Eternal Society. Your great-grandfather was not only the chief magician, he was the designer of the suppressor, but on a deeper level, he was the prophet of the peace treaty. According to legend, the descendants of the creator will bear the fate of removing the shackles. You, Siying, are the destined one. Your birth is not a coincidence. The bookshelf in the library has been waiting for you for 20 years before it was triggered. Siying took the jade pendant and touched it with her fingertips, and blue light rushed into her mind like electricity. The vision flickered. In the palace 300 years ago, the image of great-grandfather became clear. He was white-haired, kneeling in front of the eternal palace, the blueprint in his hand burning like fire. I was wrong. The suppressor was supposed to seal the war, but it was twisted into an eternal chain. Descendants, bear my responsibility, broker a treaty, and redeem peace. The voice echoed like thunder, and Siying's chest felt tight and painful, as if there was a mountain on her back. I am destined to be like this. Grandpa never mentioned it. He always said that the family has a heavy burden, so this is it. She murmured, her heart churning. From a curious assistant to now a prisoner of fate, this responsibility is like an iron chain, making her breathless. But looking at the blue light of the jade pendant, she felt a warmth, not a burden, but a calling. Yushi came closer, the green light caressed the jade pendant. Wow, Siying, aren't you born to be a hero? Sister, I support you. But don't panic, our team is here. Danny nodded, and the prosthetic limb tapped her shoulder. Little girl, when fate bites someone, bite him back. Who doesn't go into battle with a ghost story on his back? Lijuan smiled, a trace of relief flashed in her eyes. Yes, this life experience is not a curse, it is a key. Siying, from now on, you will no longer passively intervene, you must actively shape history, just like your ancestors should have done. Come, I will teach you the ultimate magic, time pulse fusion. Imagine time like a river. You can not only jump, but also reshape the tributaries. She held Siying's hand, blue light intertwined, and knowledge poured in like a tide, rune veins, energy circulation, and the buzzing in her head. Siying felt that her body had grown wings. Try, focus on the jade pendant. Siying closed her eyes, the jade pendant became hot, the bookshelf trembled slightly, and a small vortex emerged, in which 3 time and space fragments were superimposed, the library, the foggy valley, and the palace. She turned slightly, and the fragments reorganized, the fireball on the battlefield turned into the candlelight of negotiation. I can shape it. She opened her eyes, excited but wary, but I feel dizzy, the power is too strong. As soon as he finished speaking, the air in the library froze. The starlight outside the window is distorted, as if being stirred by invisible hands. The ground trembled slightly, and the books on the bookshelf moved without any wind, making a rustling whisper. Danny stood up alertly. No. What is this? Lijuan's face turned pale, the suppressor backfires. The core is cracked, and the Eternal Society has launched a conspiracy, time is flowing turbulently, and they are pulling at the portal. Suddenly, the blue light surged, and a crack exploded in the center of the bookshelf. Black mist sprang out like a poisonous snake, mixed with fragments of silver light. Ziyuan's voice came from the crack, taunting like cold wind, "Welcome to my game, the destined one. The chain of the eternal society is specially prepared for you. The crack expanded, and the turbulence of time poured out like a flood. The walls of the library were twisted, candlelight burned in reverse, and the air was filled with the smell of burnt ozone and the sharpness of metal. The book flew up, and the pages danced like snowflakes. Siying felt the runes in her body being pulled, as if being torn apart. Ah! This turbulence is sucking my power. She knelt down, the jade pendant rolled down, her vision split into countless fragments, and her headache felt like a hammer. Yushi screamed, Siying. The portal is collapsing, and the turbulence is going to swallow us up. She rushed over, green light burst out, wrapping around the edge of the crack, but the black mist came back, and the green light shattered like glass. Her face turned pale, and she gritted her teeth and said, I can't hold on, Danny, help. Danny rushed forward, her prosthetic limb buzzing. Fully opened, the mechanical arm stretched into a stand, and the sword light injected green light. Little girl, hold on. My prosthetic limb has a stabilizing module. The magic fragments picked up from the battlefield can lock the energy flow. They worked together, the green light and the buzzing of the prosthetic limb intertwined, like vines and iron nets, barely stabilizing the edge of the door. The turbulence roared, the black mist grabbed like claws, and sparks flew from Danny's prosthetic limb. Damn, this thing is corroding. Yushi, work harder, your green light is the key. Li Juan pulled Siying up and said, Child, time fusion. Use your life experience key to reverse the turbulence. But Siying felt that the power was leaking out and the runes were dim. I can't hold on anymore. It's sucking my blood, and the ancestral responsibility is like fire. An inner monologue flashed, they can't be allowed to sacrifice for me, from passive to active, I will take the responsibility this time. Fear turned into determination, she grabbed the jade pendant, gritted her teeth and stood up, Aunt Lijuan, teach me fusion, I will use it to exchange for their safety. The blue light burst out, and her mind locked on the core of the turbulence, the jade pendant resonated with the runes, and the tributaries of time were reshaped. She sacrificed part of her ability, the edge fragmentation of her fused vision, in exchange for a stable wave that was injected into the portal. Break the chain. The black mist screamed, the turbulence reversed, and the cracks shrank, but Siying's vision went dark, her power receded like a tide, and the jade pendant cracked. I got it. They are safe. She fell to the ground, feeling empty inside her body as she gasped, and the runes only shimmered. The combined efforts of Yushi and Danny paid off, the door was stabilized and the black mist receded. Yushi breathed a sigh of relief, and the afterglow of the green light dissipated. She hugged Siying, fool. Why are you sacrificing? We are a team. Danny retracted her limbs, and the hum became weaker. Little girl, you took the initiative this time. It was worth sacrificing part of the fusion, the turbulence stopped, and Yuan's conspiracy has been ruined. Li Juan helped Siying up, with tears in her eyes, my child, you have grown up. From the girl who triggered the bookshelf to the guardian who shapes history now. This ultimate guide is not the Bai Jiao. Your life experience is now strength, not a shackle. Siying wiped her sweat, and her heart was as clear as dawn. The pain of sacrifice made her see clearly that responsibility is not a cage of fate, but the wings of choice. She no longer passively waits for history to turn, but actively pushes it forward. Thank you everyone. Ziyuan's conspiracy blocked it, but eternity will still exist. We have to speed up the signing of the peace treaty, the next node is the final negotiation of the palace. Yushi nodded and smiled, the enemy. Sister Tao continues to fight, who is afraid of the silver-eyed ghost? Danny tapped the prosthetic limb, I'll repair this thing and prepare for the next round. Li Juan picked up the cracked jade pendant, rest, but the aftermath of the turbulence will bring new clues. Outside the window, the stars are steady, but there is faint thunder in the distance, as if history is whispering, waiting for us to listen. They sat around, the candles were lit again, and Siying felt a little lighter on her shoulders amidst the laughter of the team. The impact of life experience passes by like the wind, leaving traces of tenacity. As the night progresses, the shadow of the bookshelf lengthens, indicating that a greater test is quietly approaching. The candles in the library gradually burned away the last traces of wax, and the night wind slipped in through the gaps in the arched windows, carrying the moist smell of the fog outside. Siying rubbed her eyes, the crack in the jade pendant still ached in her palms. She played with it, the aftermath of the turbulence echoing in her mind. Aunt Lijuan, that black mist just now, it seems to be warning us that eternity will not stop like this. Yushi leaned next to her, the green light had recovered a little, flickering like a naughty firefly. Yes, sisters. But our team is super strong, and Ziyuan's silver-eyed ghost will be defeated if he comes again. Dan. Ni stood up, her prosthetic limb buzzed, and she patted the mud on her knees. Little girls, stop talking. Get some sleep first and practice new tricks tomorrow. The final point of the palace negotiations is waiting for us. Lijuan nodded, her silver hair lengthening the shadow in the candlelight. Go, children. The bookshelf will keep vigil. Siying nodded and dragged her tired body home. The bed in the apartment was soft, and she fell into sleep as soon as she touched the pillow. In her dream, there was the firelight of the foggy valley and the whispers of her ancestors. But in the middle of the night, a rapid knock on the door woke her up. Outside the door was Yushi, with messy short hair and a face as pale as paper. Siying. Something bad happened. Danny. Danny is missing. She rushed in panting, holding a flashing silver medal in her hand, the mark of the guardian. I just came back from the warrior area. The door lock of her house was smashed. There was this thing on the ground, and there were traces of black mist. Aunt Lijuan said this was Ziyuan's handiwork. Siying's heart sank, and the rune text could feel hot, like an alarm bell ringing. She grabbed her coat and said, "Let's go to the library." The two of them rushed out the door. The night street was empty, and the rumble of the carriage echoed in the distance. In the library, Lijuan had lit all the candles and her face was ashen. She spread out a piece of parchment with a scrawled rune message on it. Destined One, if you want to save your warriors, come alone to the Forbidden Age, the origin of the Shadow Origin War. The Eternal Palace is waiting for you. Ziyuan. Lijuan's voice trembled, this is a trap. The Forbidden Age is the source of the turbulence of time, and the portal is unstable. Whoever goes there is in danger. But Danny, she is the key, and her prosthetic limbs hide clues to the war. Yushi gritted her teeth, I'll go with Siying. The green light can be stable. But Siying shook her head and felt like a knife was twisting in her heart. We can't let everyone sacrifice anymore. Danny's prosthetic limbs buzzed, always so reliable, like the backbone of a veteran. No, go alone. What he wants is me, my blood. Aunt Lijuan, you teach me time prediction. The technique derived from fused vision can see fragments of the future clearly. Lijuan hesitated, pain flashed in her eyes. Okay, but prediction it will consume your energy, like a mirror that peeks into your destiny, it is easy to break. Remember, your faith is an anchor. Siying nodded, holding the cracked jade pendant, I will save her. Yushi, you and Lijuan stay here, if there is turbulence, don't let the door collapse. In front of the bookshelf, the blue light rotates alone, the vortex opening like a black hole. Siying took a deep breath and locked her mind on the Forbidden Era, the origin of the Shadow Source War 300 years ago, the Dark Hall of the Eternal Palace. When she stepped into it, the world became extremely distorted, the sound of wind in her ears was like the howling of thousands of ghosts, and her stomach was churning. When he landed, his feet stepped on the cold stone slabs. The air was filled with the smell of old musty and the sharpness of metal. He was surrounded by a collapsed palace, the walls were covered with vine-like black mist, and the muffled sound of war drums and the roar of magical explosions could be heard in the distance. In the center of the hall, on a towering altar, the black crystal pulsed like a heart. Danny was hung by chains, her prosthetic limbs hanging weakly, her face pale, and blood oozing from the corners of her mouth. Siying, don't come, this is a trap. She shouted hoarsely, her voice echoing in the empty hall. Ziyuan walked out of the shadows, his robe flowing like night, his silver eyes flashing mockingly. Come alone. Smart, destined. Your team is too much trouble. He waved his hand, and the black chains tightened. Danny groaned, and her prosthetic limbs hummed in protest. Siying's heart was on fire, the runes lit up, and she instinctively activated time prediction. Her vision was pushed forward for a few minutes, and fragments of the future flashed like fragments. The chains would suddenly shrink, the silver light from far away would come from the flanks, and the black mist would block the retreat. What do you want to do? Let Danny go. Siying growled, moving sideways to avoid the predicted trajectory of the attack. Ziyuan sneered, and the silver light condensed into a whip in the palm of his hand. What are you doing? Maintaining order. Do you think the peace treaty is a good thing? War is the fuel of the world, and the suppressor is the source of power of my eternal society. I am not a guardian, I am a ruler. 300 years ago, I will steal the core and let the war burn forever, and the magic residue will nourish us. Sign the treaty. You will destroy everything, my empire. His voice was like thunder, the flame of ambition flashed in his silver eyes, and the black mist in the palace surged like an obedient servant. Siying was stunned and had another prediction: he would seduce her and promise power. You are not protecting history, but for power. Are the deaths of those soldiers all your game? Danny gasped, Siying, don't listen. His ambition has been hidden from Foggy Valley. Before she could finish her words, the black chains tightened, and she coughed out blood. Siying gritted her teeth, predicting that her vision would expand, and she could clearly see the weak point of the altar. The veins of the black crystal were connected to the chain, and if it was broken in one place, it would be loosened. The blue light shot out like an arrow, directly hitting the veins. The chains loosened, and Danny fell. She turned over to catch it, and the prosthetic limbs hummed and revived. Thank you, little girl. Danny whispered, her sword flashed, and she cut off the remaining chains. But the silver whip of Ziyuan was whipped, and the foreknowledge made Siying pull Danny away and roll away. The whip hit the stone slab, and the gravel flew like rain. Join me, Siying. Ziyuan approached, his voice like a seductive whisper, your bloodline should have ruled. Imagine, in the endless war, you are the queen, time is in your palm. Peace. That is the dream of the weak, which will make the magic dry up. We will always give you power, far beyond the suppressor. His silver light turned into a phantom, and temptation flashed in Siying's vision. She sat on the throne, the blue light was like a crown, and she surrendered on the battlefield. But predicting what will happen next is like pouring ice on water. Power corrodes everything. Yushi's green light goes out, Lijuan's secret becomes empty, and the peace treaty turns to dust. An inner monologue came to me. Is this temptation like the mistakes of our ancestors, repeating them? No, I choose peace, not for power, for those crying soldiers, and for the laughter of the team. Faith was like an anchor. She shook her head. Get away. Your empire is built on a pile of corpses, I would rather crush it. The climax breaks out, Ziyuan roars, silver light pours out like a tide, black mist seals the palace, and the pulse of time twists into a turbulent whirlpool. Siying pushed Danny away, go back to the portal, I'll stop him. But Danny insisted, together. The prosthetic sword light intertwined with the blue light, and precognition allowed them to dodge the silver whip. Siying counterattacked, the time fusion was activated, reshaping the tributaries, the black crystal veins were reversed, and the palace trembled. Ziyuan's attack was delayed. She seized the gap and injected a blue light into his silver eyes. See your future clearly, power collapses and eternity will fly away. The fragments of foreknowledge pierced his mind. He staggered back, the silver light dimmed. No way, you little girl. The black mist receded, the cracks in the palace expanded, and the turbulence was like the roar of a wild beast. At the same time, in the library, Yushi and Lijuan were waiting anxiously. The portal rippled unsteadily, and the green light tried to stabilize it, but black mist seeped in. Aunt Lijuan, Siying is in danger. I feel, the green light is responding. Yushi closed her eyes, heat surged in her palms, and suddenly, a new light exploded, gold and green intertwined, like the bond of a team taking shape. This is team magic. I have unlocked the chain of connection. It can transmit power over long distances and connect us. Li Juan's eyes lit up, good boy. But to transmit my knowledge, you have to sacrifice. I erased part of the historical memory in exchange for an advantageous blueprint. She gritted her teeth and held down the bookshelf, her silver hair flying, and the knowledge in her brain burned like fire. Go, pass it on to Siying. The weakness of the Forbidden Age, the hidden door of the Eternal Palace, can reverse the turbulence. The golden and green chain shot into the door like a bridge of light. Siying felt the warmth pouring in from a distance, and her vision was clear. The hidden door was behind the altar. She pulled Danny to rush, and pushed open the stone door. Blue light burst out, reversed the turbulence, and the black mist rolled back. Ziyuan was sucked into the crack. This is not the end. His roar dissipated. Siying and Danny jumped into the residual whirlpool. The world was distorted, and the sound of wind in their ears gradually faded. When they landed in the library, the two fell into a ball, and Yushi rushed up to hug them. Sisters. You are okay. Li Juan helped them up, but her eyes were a little hollow. Knowledge gained advantage, but some fragments are lost forever. Siying gasped, feeling like she was reborn. In the face of temptation, she kept her faith. From the girl's hesitation to the guardian's decision, her growth was as profound as blue light. Thank you everyone. Ziyuan's ambition is revealed. He is not an enemy, but a monster. Our connection chain, this is a new beginning. Danny patted the prosthetic limb and said, little girl, you saved me, now it's our turn to fight back. Eternity will come to snatch the node of the palace negotiations. Yushi smiled, and the golden green light flashed. Yes. The team magic is online. Who is afraid of turbulence? Li Juan nodded. The night outside the window was dark, and there was faint thunder in the distance, like the breath of history. They looked at each other, and the candlelight was rekindled, indicating the final showdown, and they were knocking on the door. The candlelight in the library trembled slightly in the night wind, like the eternal flame in the team's heart. Siying leaned against the bookshelf, the crack in the jade pendant still aching in her palms. She watched Yushi's golden green light dancing on her fingertips, and felt a warm current rushing into her heart. The chain of connecting pulses, this thing is really magical. We are now like connected lanterns. Whoever extinguishes it will light it up. She tried to smile, with the lingering fear of the palace just now in her voice. Danny rubbed her prosthetic limb, and the buzzing sound was as low as an old clock. Little girl, don't be happy too early. The silver-eyed ghost of Ziyuan has escaped, but his ambition is like a weed and cannot be burned out. The node of the palace negotiations is tomorrow, the final meeting of the leaders of the two empires written in the history books. A treaty is signed there, and the war ends. Li Juan stood firm while holding on to the table. The wound on her shoulder had been wrapped, but the emptiness in her eyes was still there. She took a deep breath, her silver hair disheveled like the old flag. Yes, children. The core of the suppressor is cracked, and the pulse of the battlefield is weakened, but eternity will counterattack at the last moment. My knowledge is exchanged for blueprints, which show that there are hidden time nodes in the negotiation room. Siying, please use your time fusion of pulses to influence the leaders and resolve their misunderstandings. The Emperor suspects that the rebels have an assassination plot, and the rebel leaders are afraid that they will only sign if they implant the concept of peace. But be prepared, sacrifice is inevitable. Yushi jumped up, and a green light flashed. Sacrifice? Aunt Li Juan, don't be scary. We have a connection chain, and I can bless you from a distance. Siying, you take the lead, Danny and I will protect the wings, and Aunt Li Juan will sit at the door. She took Siying's hand, and the golden green light was like a sister's oath, and it was as warm as hot soup in winter. Siying nodded, and the hesitation in her heart gradually dissipated like fog. From the panic of the library assistant to the determination now, she felt like a tree, its branches and leaves stretched out. Okay, let's go. We can't let those soldiers die in vain. Danny patted her back. The prosthetic limb felt as hard as iron. Little girl, you take the lead this time. My tactics specialize in conspiracy. In front of the bookshelf, blue light intertwined with gold and green, and the vortex swallowed the four people like a huge wave. The world was distorted, the wind howled like thousands of horses galloping, and Siying's stomach churned. When I landed, my feet stepped on the gorgeous carpet. The air was filled with the sweetness of incense and candles, mixed with the faint smell of rust. Outside the palace, the lingering sounds of the war were still there. The negotiation hall was splendid, with envoys sitting at both ends of the long table. The emperor sat high on the throne, with a shining crown, and a face as cold as a stone sculpture. The rebel leader sat across from him, with a steel-hard beard and wolf-like vigilant eyes. There were many guards around, the clang of armor clashing echoed, the tapestries on the walls were painted with the blood of old battles, and the air was as tight as a bowstring. Siying, the node is on the emperor's wine glass and the leader's scroll. Li Juan's voice sounded in her mind, whispering through the connection chain. They disguised themselves as palace maids. Yushi's green light disappeared, Danny's prosthetic arm put away its sword light, and Siying slipped close to the long table. The emperor was roaring. Who can guarantee that the assassination rumors of the rebels are not a trap? A treaty? A joke? The leader countered. Your empire is full of spies. Signing is digging your own grave. There was a flood of discussion in the hall, and the heat of the brazier hit her face. Siying felt that the pulse of time was like a heartbeat, rapid and chaotic. She took a deep breath, activated the time fusion, and split her vision. Past misunderstandings were superimposed on the present, the emperor's fear was like black mist, and the leader's suspicion was like an iron thorn. Aunt Li Juan's blueprint. I will reshape it. With a thought, Siying's figure was like a ghost clone, and she was beside the emperor in an instant. Blue light poured into the wine glass, and she whispered like a spring breeze, Your Majesty, imagine your people working in the fields instead of crying in the trenches. The treaty is not a weakness, but a bridge. The rebels have no intention of assassination, and they are tired of the sea of blood. The emperor was stunned, confusion flashed in his eyes, the wine glass tipped over, and the blue light was like the seed was planted deeply. Perhaps, the intelligence is wrong. Sir, Chief, let's sit down and talk in detail. In another moment, she went to the leader's scroll, and blue light penetrated into the ink. Chief, your people are waiting for you to bring peace, not corpses. The empire's suspicion is fear, not hostility. Sign it and let history turn. The leader's pen tip paused, and his beard trembled. Yes. I have a deep misunderstanding. Your Majesty, I believe you for once. The atmosphere in the hall relaxed, the messenger's whispers turned to nods, and the red lines on the map faded like melting snow. Siying retreated into the shadows, her heart beating faster. It's done. The idea has been implanted, they are signing. Yushi whispered, Sisters, this is great. The pulse chain is warm, like applauding. Danny was alert, Don't be too happy too soon, I can smell the silver light. Before he finished speaking, the air at the top of the hall condensed, and black mist poured down like a heavy rain. Ziyuan jumped down from the crack in the sky, hunting in his robes, and his silver eyes were as red as blood. The last obstacle, let's begin. He raised his hand, silver light burst out, and the time storm awakened like a giant beast. The hall twisted, the carpet rolled up like waves, the candlelight backfired into a fire dragon, the tapestry on the wall came to life, the phantoms of old war soldiers rushed out, and the sword light danced wildly. The movements of the emperor and the leader froze, the treaty scroll burned with black edges, and the storm pulsed like a heart, absorbing all stability. The ultimate weapon of the eternal society, the heart of the storm. Destined one, you can't destroy me. Ziyuan sneered and whipped the silver whip toward Siying. The storm was mixed with turbulent fragments and cut the air like a knife. Siying, the source of the storm is in the crystal on the ceiling of the hall. Li Juan's voice was urgent, and the blueprint came from the connection chain, but to seal it, you need to seal part of your memories in exchange for stable energy. Otherwise, history will collapse. Siying's heart felt like falling into an ice cave, the heat of the storm was scorching, and the roar of the phantom soldiers was deafening. Memories? My library days. Yushi's laughter. Her heart was churning. Sacrifice is like a key, unlocking peace but locking herself. From the excitement of adventure to the protection now, she understands that growth is not a free lunch. Fear welled up, but looking at the frozen leader, she gritted her teeth. I will do it. For them. The blue light flourished, her mind locked on the crystal, and the gold and green of the connection chain poured in like a tide. Yushi, Danny, Aunt Lijuan, lend me your strength. Yushi's face turned pale, and the green light turned on. Sister, take it. My green light will give you stability. The golden and green chains were wrapped like vines. Yushi's knees were weak, but she smiled. Remember our sister's shopping days, don't forget them all. Danny's prosthetic arm buzzed, and the mechanical arm stretched into a shield. Little girl, I will pass on my tactical memory to you. Block the edge of the storm. The buzz was like thunder, and Danny's vision was blurred. Memories of the old war flowed out. It was worth it, for the sake of peace. Lijuan's silver hair was flying, and the remaining knowledge was like a fire. Child, my final secret, I am your great-grandfather's guardian. 300 years ago, I swore to wait for his descendants to come. He loved your mother, so he allowed the bloodline to continue. Now, I will give you the entire blueprint, seal it. Her voice was broken, and the memory disappeared like smoke. Relief flashed in her eyes. Siying felt the power pouring in, like a flood, but the pain of sacrifice was as painful as a knife. The blue light penetrated the crystal, and she sealed her memories, the surprise of first touching the bookshelf in the library, the excitement of the small test in the mine, the panic in the foggy valley. Those fragments were like falling leaves, turning into blue mist and pouring into the storm. The inner monologue is like the final whisper. I transformed from a curious girl into a guardian. This sacrifice is not a loss, but a seed of peace. The crystal shattered, the storm reversed, the black mist rolled back, the phantom soldiers dissipated, and the hall was restored. Ziyuan's silver eyes widened. No. Your sacrifice. The silver whip shattered into points of light, and he was swallowed up by the turbulent currents. The roar echoed, I will repay this debt. The figure sank into the crack, and the shadow of the Eternal Society temporarily retreated. The Emperor and the leader came back to their senses and blinked blankly. Just now, was it an illusion? No, let's sign the treaty. The scroll was spread out, the ink fell, and the idea of peace filled the hall like sunshine. Siying retreated to the portal, her vision blurred, and her memories were blank like sand blown by the wind, but her heart was as clear as a mirror. She was no longer an adventurer, but a guardian of history, and her sacrifice had brought eternal peace. The remaining warmth of the pulse chain dissipated, and Yushi hugged her. Sister, have you not forgotten me? Siying smiled and touched her head. How could it be? The bond of the team will never be sealed. Danny patted her shoulder. Little girl, you have grown up. Lijuan whispered, in the end, the secret has been revealed, child. You are our hope. The vortex swallowed them up, and the world flashed back to the library. The candles were still bright, and the stars outside the window were like a celebration. Siying sat down, feeling lighter on her shoulders. The peak of her growth was like the wind on the top of the mountain, free and firm. But in the distance, a faint silver light flickers, indicating that the end is not yet complete. The candlelight in the library stretched out its shadow under the starlight. Siying leaned against the bookshelf and took a deep breath. The aftertaste of the palace incense still lingered in the air. She touched the blank space in her mind. Those fragments of memories were like sand in the wind. She couldn't grasp them, but it made her heart feel more empty. Sisters, this feeling, the treaty has been signed, the war should stop, right? She turned to Yushi, trying to cover up her fatigue with a smile. Yushi nodded, and the golden green light danced lightly in the palm of her hand. Yes. I saw the handwriting of the Emperor and the leader through the connecting chain. When the ink dried, history took a turn. Danny tapped the prosthetic leg, and the buzzing sound was like the whisper of an old friend. Little girl, don't be too happy. I can smell that silver light thing. Li Juan stood by the window, her silver hair reflecting the night, her eyes solemn. Children, rest. But the pulse of the suppressor hasn't stopped yet. As soon as he finished speaking, the bookshelf trembled, and blue light sprang up like a wild beast. The portal vortex exploded uncontrollably, and black mist mixed with silver light poured out, like a torn wound. Siying's vision flashed, and the picture of the palace came from the link. The negotiation hall was in chaos like a boiling pot, the treaty scroll was blazing with black edges, the emperor's crown was crooked, and the leader's beard was covered with ashes. The guards drew their swords and slashed wildly, and the air echoed with screams and the clang of metal clashing. No! Ziyuan, he's back! Siying roared, her heart beating like a war drum. Li Juan's face turned pale. The heart of the storm is not broken. He gathered all the guardians and counterattacked the signing site. The roots of the global suppressor are there, we have to go. Let's go. Yushi pulled up Siying, the golden and green chains were entangled like vines, the connection is online, sisters, unite. Danny stretched out her prosthetic limbs and fully activated the hum, my tactics are designed to deal with melee. Little girl, take the lead. Li Wan gritted her teeth and followed, I will pass on the ultimate blueprint to you, but, this time, I have to take care of everything. The whirlpool swallowed up the four of them, and the world twisted into a silver-black whirlpool. The sound of wind in her ears was like the cry of thousands of ghosts, and her stomach was churning. When they landed, they fell into the chaotic center of the palace hall. The carpet was torn like scars, the candlelight danced like fiery snakes, the ghosts of old wars in the tapestries on the walls came to life, and the roars of soldiers made their eardrums ring. The air was hot and pungent, mixed with the smell of burnt paper and bloody rust. The emperor was trapped on the throne by the black mist. The leader waved his sword to protect himself, but the treaty scroll was on the edge of ashes. Ziyuan hangs high on the ceiling of the hall, with robes spread out like night curtains, silver eyes as red as lava, surrounded by dozens of guardians, black robes like shadows, talismans all bright, and silver chains like nets sealing off the entire hall. Destined one, do you think you will win by sacrificing some memories? All the power of the eternal society is here. The heart of the storm restarts, and the global network of suppressors will swallow up all interference. He laughed, waved the silver whip, and the storm broke out. The turbulence of time poured down like huge waves, the walls of the hall twisted into whirlpools, the movements of the guards were reversed, and arrows flew back from the future, smashing the long table. The black mist pulses like the heart of a giant beast, the roots of the global suppressor gush out from the ground, faintly connecting to the distant battlefield, and the buzzing sound is like the cracking of the earth's crust. Siying's knees weakened, and the blue light runes were as hot as fire. This, full power. How can we stop it? A struggle flashed through her mind, the blank memory had made her weak, and now facing this silver-black storm, she felt like ants shaking a tree. The emperor's roar came from the throne, traitor. The treaty is ruined, and the war is reignited. The leader swung his sword to cut off a chain, hold on. But this fog sucks my strength. The guards in the hall fell to the ground, and the black fog penetrated into their souls like parasites. The suppressors revived, magic fireballs flew around, and exploded like rain of rubble. Siying, merge everything. Li Juan shouted, her silver hair flying, she rushed forward, her blue robe torn, time pulse, precognition, delay, connection, all open. But I have to pass you the ultimate wisdom. She pressed her palm on Siying's back, blue light rushed in like an electric current, and knowledge came flooding in, the blueprint of the global suppressor, the weak link, the secret core of the eternal society. Li Juan's face was as pale as paper, and relief flashed in her eyes, my child, my 300 years of waiting are over. I have passed on my great-grandfather's last wish, live and promote peace. As soon as she finished speaking, her mind exploded, and the remaining memories burned herself like fire, turning into pure blue mist and injecting into the connection chain. Li Juan's figure gradually faded, and her silver hair disappeared like smoke. Remember, the team is your anchor. She fell to the ground, and the blue robe turned into light spots and disappeared, leaving only a cracked jade pendant rolling down at Siying's feet. Aunt Li Juan! Siying screamed, tears mixed with blood sliding down her face. My heart is like a knife. Can my mentor's life be exchanged for my wisdom? This sacrifice is too heavy. But the blueprint flashes in my mind, and the global context is as clear as palm prints. She gritted her teeth and stood up, her runes brightened, and all her abilities merged. The timeline was reshaped like a river, her vision was predictive of the trajectory of the silver whip, her delayed ripples froze the chains, and the golden, green, and blue light of the linking chain intertwined into a network. Sisters, listen to me. Yushi, hold the green shield beside the hall to block the black mist. Danny, use a tactical side attack to break the guardian talisman. Let's join forces to smash the heart of the storm. Yushi nodded, and green light erupted like a giant web of vines, wrapping around the hall. Sisters, take it. I'll give you all my green light. Lianmai's blood surges. She knelt down, blood seeping out from her palms, the golden and green chains stretched like living things, stabilizing the edge of the turbulence, and the black mist hit the shield, making a creaking and shattering sound. The screams of the guards stopped, and the emperor gasped, "This light saved us." Danny's prosthetic arm buzzed at full speed, and the mechanical arm stretched into a multi-edged wheel. Little girl, the old rule of the battlefield is to win in chaos. She rushed into the group of guardians, her sword light cut off the talisman like a windmill, her black robe shattered, and silver light splashed everywhere. Come on, silver-eyed ghost's men, take my sword. A guardian fell to the ground, the talisman exploded into sparks, the chain net loosened, and sparks flew from Danny's prosthetic limb, but she laughed, it's worth it. Seeing, the road is open. Ziyuan's silver eyes narrowed and he roared like thunder, traitor's wisdom. Useless. He gathered the silver light into a giant spear and pierced Siying. The pulse of the heart of the storm accelerated, the global suppressor buzzed like an earthquake, and the shouts of killing from the distant battlefield came through the connection, like an invisible whip lashing the soul. Siying dodged, and the precognition made her move sideways, and the fused blue light reflected on the tip of the spear. Your power is based on lies. Aunt Li Juan's sacrifice was not in vain. The internal struggle was like a storm, the fusion power made her feel the pull of her soul, and the wisdom burned her mind like fire. To remove the global suppressor, she had to sacrifice the last blood connection and cut off the regrets of her ancestors, otherwise the trajectory of history would backfire and the treaty would turn into ashes. But if we don't do this, the war will continue and the team's efforts will be in vain. Fear welled up. What would I become? Rootless drifter. But Yushi's warm green light, Danny's buzzing, and Li Juan's blueprint echoed in my ears. For them, for those faces on the battlefield, I choose to sacrifice. Now! Siying shouted, her fusion ability was fully activated. She jumped to the top of the hall, blue light erupted like a galaxy, piercing the heart of the storm. The crystal veins are exposed, and the roots of the global suppressor flash like a giant network. Her mind was locked, and the blood connection was broken. The image of her ancestors was shattered into light spots, injected into the blue mist. Break it, shackles. I will exchange my blood for yours. The pain was like thousands of needles piercing her heart. Siying coughed up blood, but help came from the connection chain. Yushi's golden green healed like spring rain, and Danny's tactical prediction blocked the silver whip. She smashed into the crystal core, the global veins collapsed, the black mist dissipated like smoke, the suppressors stopped humming, the hall trembled, and the firelight of the distant battlefield dimmed. The guardians exclaimed, the black robes fell apart, and the silver light fled like a defeated dog. Ziyuan's silver eyes widened, and the giant spear shattered. He staggered back, it's impossible, my empire. Siying approached calmly, and the aftermath of the fusion was like a wave. It's over. Peace is not a dream. A blue light locked him, and his vision flashed into his future. Power collapsed, and eternity would fly away. Ziyuan roared intermittently, and his figure was swallowed up by the turbulent current. I remember this, Det. The silver light dissipated, the hall returned to silence, the treaty scroll reappeared, and the ink stains were like new life. The emperor and the leader came to their senses and knelt down. The miracle, the treaty lasts forever. The guards cheered, and the warm wind of peace filled the air. Siying fell to the ground, her knees weak. She felt empty due to the sacrifice of blood, but her heart was as full as dawn. From being triggered by curiosity to being protected at this peak, she had transformed, no longer a girl, but a bridge of history. She rushed up and hugged her. Sister. You did it. The suppressor world is shattered, and the magic is free. Danny helped her up and tapped her prosthetic limb. Little girl, the team is climaxing, this feels like winning the whole war. Lijuan's jade pendant glowed in the palm of her hand, and the aftertaste of the blueprint was like a whisper. Perfect growth, child. But Siying raised her head, and there was a faint silver shadow flickering in the distance outside the window, and the aftermath of the turbulent flow was like a whisper, indicating that the final echo had not yet stopped. They looked at each other, the candlelight was rekindled, and the bond of the team was like an eternal blue light, illuminating the way forward. The cheers in the palace hall came like a tide, the armors of the guards clashed with each other, the emperor's crown flashed golden light under the candlelight, and the leader's beard was still stained with ashes, but he had already opened a rare smile. The treaty scroll is spread out on the long table, and the ink is as dry as new. The air is filled with the sweet fragrance of candles and the fresh smell of earth. The rusty smell of war is gradually blown away by the wind. Siying knelt on the ground, her chest was empty, and the pain of blood sacrifice was like the remaining waves after the ebbing tide, gently beating on her soul. But when she looked up and saw the leaders shaking hands, a warm current surged in her heart. This is the starting point of peace, not a dream. A miracle, the treaty lasts forever, the emperor roared, his voice trembling like an old tree in the wind. He turned to Siying, his eyes turning from cold to awe. Girl, you are a guardian from heaven. The empire owes you my life. The leader nodded, and his rough palm patted her shoulder. The same goes for the rebels. From now on, there will be no war or chaos, and the children can farm. The messengers in the hall murmured and turned to applause. The gravel on the carpet was still rolling, but the chaos was a thing of the past. Siying reluctantly stood up. She supported her. The golden green light was like a sister's embrace. Sisters, look at their eyes, they are no longer wolves, they are people. Danny's prosthetic limb buzzed and tapped Siying's back. Little girl, you won this battle easily. Aunt Lijuan's blueprint was not in vain. But the joy was fleeting. The silver shadow outside the window flickered like a will-o'-the-wisp, the cracks in the ceiling of the hall were still trembling slightly, and the remaining threads of black mist swam like poisonous snakes. Siying felt the unstable pulse of time. Although the global suppressor was broken, the aftermath of the turbulence buzzed like a broken string. It's not over yet. Ziyuan's remnant forces are pulling at the rift. She murmured, the jade pendant heating up in her palms, and the aftertaste of Lijuan's blue mist poured into her mind like a whisper. Seal the last silver vein, otherwise history will be slightly distorted and the peace treaty will become an empty talk. Siying took a deep breath, activated the remnants of her fusion ability, and her vision flickered. Silver shadow was the remnant of the guardian, hiding on the edge of the rift, trying to restart the heart of the storm. Sisters, connect the pulse chain, lend me my power. Siying shouted, and the blue light stretched like silk thread. She nodded and injected green light. Take it. My green vines will entangle those silver ghosts to death. Danny stretched out her prosthetic limbs. It's an old tactic, I'll cut off their retreat. The three of them held hands, and the golden, green, and blue light intertwined into a network and shot out the window. The silver shadow screamed, and the black mist rushed like claws, but the connection chain tightened like an iron net. Siying turned her mind, and the time veins merged and locked the veins. The silver light shattered into light spots, and the roars of the remnants of the guardians were intermittent. Eternity will be immortal. But the blue mist swallowed everything, the cracks slowly healed, and the air in the hall was finally calm. The emperor exclaimed, another miracle. Girls, the palace will always remember you. Siying smiled and wiped the sweat from her forehead. Your Majesty, just remember the treaty. We should go. The vortex opens again, and the world twists like a final farewell. The howling of the wind faded away, and they landed in the library, where the familiar smell of books and ink hit their nostrils. Outside the arched window, the morning light shines in, and the dust dances in the sunlight. Everything is the same as before, but different. Siying rubbed her eyes, the runes only shimmered, but her chest was no longer empty, the warmth of peace seemed to fill the void. I'm back. She murmured, moving lightly to the bookshelf, her fingers stroking the wood grain, and the warm touch felt like the embrace of an old friend. She circled excitedly, sisters, look outside. The carriages on the street no longer smell of gunpowder smoke, and the hawking sounds are cheerful. She opened the door, sunlight poured in, and the market in the distance was bustling with activity. Children chased and played, and there were no traces of patrols. Danny followed, her prosthetic limb humming briskly, little girl, the world has changed. The armless veterans in the warrior area are probably celebrating. My home, should go and see it. Siying nodded, and a strange calmness filled her heart. The changed world is like a washed picture, with brighter colors. The magic suppressor was broken, and there was faint elemental power flowing in the air. The flowers on the roadside actually glowed slightly, and a small flame appeared in the child's hand, harmless and warm. Peace has really come. She whispered, and her inner monologue was like a breeze. From the panic of the library assistant to the guardian who broke the shackles, this journey was like a long dream. When I woke up, I changed, no longer afraid of responsibility, but embracing it. But the jade pendant suddenly became hot, blue light emerged, and Li Juan's image condensed like mist, silver hair, gentle smile. Children, I haven't gone far. The ultimate secret, my great-grandfather's last wish is to let the bloodline guard the new era. My soul, tied to the jade pendant, will help you seal the last crack. Li Juan in the image stretched out her hand, blue mist poured into the bookshelf, the door of the library trembled, and a hidden crack was exposed. It was the aftermath of the forbidden era, and the silver thread was pulled like a thin thread. Repair it, and I can rest in peace. Siying, use your growth to cut off this last trace. Siying held the jade pendant tightly, tears falling. Aunt Li Juan, your sacrifice. I understand. The secret is solved, our team will never be separated. She concentrated the remaining blue light, and the time fusion was lightly opened. The blue mist was like a needle thread sewing up the cracks, the silver thread shattered, and the jade pendant turned into pure light and disappeared. Li Juan's image smiled, good boy. Go and protect the peace. The blue fog dissipated, the air in the library was fresh, and the door was sealed forever. There were footsteps outside the door. She pushed the door open and pulled Danny. Sisters, it's time to celebrate. There's a party in the pub in the warrior area. Veterans heard about peace and the beer is free. Danny laughed and patted Siying's shoulder with her prosthetic arm. Little girl, let's go. This time, it's not a battlefield, it's a family dinner. The three of them walked out of the library. The sun was warm. The flower market on the street was lively. Magicians were performing tricks in public. The smell of flowers and baking bread was floating in the air. In the tavern, the lights were bright, and the veterans raised their glasses, cheers to the guardians. Danny was surrounded, and her prosthetic limbs hummed like a rhythm. She shouted, sisters, this cup is for Aunt Li Juan. Her blueprint has changed our tomorrow. She held the beer, green light flashed on the rim of the glass, yes. Siying, you are the protagonist, say a few words. Siying stood up, her face red. The noise in the tavern was like a warm quilt. I have changed since the day the bookshelf triggered it. The blood of the battlefield, Yushi's green light, Danny's sword, Li Juan's secret. Thank you for turning me from a girl into a guardian. Peace is not the end, but the beginning. Together, we will guard it. Everyone cheered, beer foam splashed, and Siying sat down, her heart as clear as a lake, reflections on the journey came, curiosity ignites adventure, fear forges perseverance, and sacrifice brings fulfillment. She touched her wrist. Although the runes were dim, they remained like a mark forever. Yushi leaned over and smiled. Sisters, are you drunk? Go home and sleep. We will have to take shifts in the library tomorrow. Danny slapped the table. Shifts? Now that magic is free, the bookshelf may sing. The three of them looked at each other and laughed, and the lights in the tavern stretched their shadows, making them warm as home. As the sun set, they walked side by side back to the library. The wind blew through the leaves, bringing with it the whispers of the distant fields. Siying stopped and looked at the arched window. We will protect the new era. Yushi held her hand. Sisters forever. Danny nodded. As long as the team remains together, peace will never die. As night falls, the lights in the library light up, like guardian eyes, illuminating the endless road to peace. The night was as thick as ink, and the warm yellow light shone through the arched window of the library, like the eyes of an old friend, gently watching the three of them return. Siying opened the door, and the familiar smell of shumo came to her face, mixed with the aroma of beer foam from the pub outside. Their footsteps clicked softly on the wooden floor. Yushi was humming a tune, and Danny's prosthetic limbs hummed like an accompaniment. The afterglow of the setting sun shines on the bookshelf, lengthening the shadows. Everything is so stable, as if time travel has never happened. Oh, this place is still the same. Yushi stretched out, and green light flickered from his fingertips unintentionally, illuminating a row of yellowed old books. But it feels different now. Think about it, the suppressor is broken, and magic is spreading all over the world like spring rain. The children on the street were playing with mud yesterday, but today they can summon small fireballs to keep warm. She turned to Siying, her eyes bright. Sister, what about you? Are you still dizzy? That bloodline sacrifice. I am always worried that you will forget us. Siying smiled and touched her wrist. The runes there had turned into faint blue marks, like a tattoo that would never fade. I'm dizzy, but not bad. The blank space of those memories is like a washed canvas, leaving more space. She walked closer to the bookshelf and touched the wood grain with her fingers. The warm touch was like waking up from an old dream. The chaos of the palace, Li Juan's blue mist, and the whispers of the ancestors flashed through his mind. The pain of sacrifice had turned into a calm lake, calm and calm. I feel free. It's not that I've lost anything, but that I've lifted a burden. My life is no longer about chains, it's about wings, allowing me to fly higher. Danny leaned against the door, tapping her prosthetic leg lightly on the floor, making a rhythmic buzz, like the whisper of a veteran. Little girl, you're right. On the battlefield, you have to throw something away in exchange for victory. I lost my arm in exchange for peace, you lost your memories in exchange for a new era. She walked over and patted Siying's shoulder with her rough palm, which felt hard but warm. Come, sit down and chat. After a glass of beer in the pub, all I can think about is the fire in Foggy Valley and Aunt Li Juan's silver hair. Her legacy must be continued. The three of them sat around the old wooden table in the reading room, and the candlelight flickered, reflecting their faces. Yushi's short hair was messy and flushed with alcohol, Danny's prosthetic limbs shone with metallic luster under the light, Siying's eyes were as clear as morning dew. Yushi spoke first, her voice brisk but filled with emotion. Do you remember the first time you triggered the bookshelf? Siying, you screamed and got sucked in. I thought you were stupid because you were reading a novel. Who would have thought that we would become time thieves and smash the heads of the Eternal Society? She came closer, and the green light danced on the table like a small lantern. My green light has changed from intuition to the anchor of the team. It feels like I have grown up. I used to feel that I was a supporting role, but now I know that the power of sisters is the real magic. Siying nodded, feeling warm in her heart. Although those blank fragments are empty, they make the memories more vivid, the smell of coal ash in the mine, the blood mud in the Foggy Valley, and the incense of the palace, all are as complete as a puzzle. Me too. From the curious assistant to the silver-eyed ghost facing Ziyuan, I have been afraid and hesitated. But every time I was in crisis, your green light and buzzing helped me. Aunt Lijuan's sacrifice. She was right, the team is the anchor. She paused after a pause, his voice was soft. I thought the truth about my life experience was a burden. The mistakes of my ancestors were chasing me like shadows. But after smashing the suppressor, I understood, bravery is not about not being afraid, it is about taking up responsibilities and then letting go of them. Calmness comes, like going home. Danny snorted, shadows of the old battle flashing in her eyes. I understand responsibility. When I lost my arm on the battlefield 100 years ago, I thought the world was over. Later, when I met you, I realized that peace does not fall from the sky. It has to be replaced with swords and prosthetics. She took out a small badge from her arms, the blue charm left by Lijuan, with fine time vein patterns engraved on the surface. This is my aunt's last thing. She passed it on to me for safekeeping. Will it be a legacy? Guard the bookshelf to prevent abuse. Magic is free, but people's hearts remain unchanged. Some people will want to use it to cause trouble. We have to patrol in shifts, like veterans guarding the sentry. As soon as the words fell, the bookshelf trembled slightly, a blue mist emerged from the badge, and Lijuan's image condensed like water waves. The silver-haired man has a gentle smile like his old mentor. Children, I haven't gone far. Her voice was soft, echoing in the candlelight, like the wind blowing through the pages of a book. The blueprint of the jade pendant is all in your hearts. Siying, your growth is my hope for 300 years. Continue the legacy, the bookshelf is a portal, not a toy. Teach newcomers that magic serves peace, not war. The image stretched out its hand, and the blue mist caressed it gently. Siying's cheek felt like a cool breeze. Remember, bravery and responsibility are the torch of the new era. Guard it, and you will be the legend. The blue mist gradually dissipated, and the badge let out a soft whistle, turning into an eternal blue crystal, embedded next to the runes on the wrist. Siying's eyes were slightly moist, and she held the blue crystal tightly. Aunt Lijuan, thank you. We will. The three of them looked at each other, and there was a solemn warmth in the air. Yushi wiped her eyes and smiled, oh, don't cry. Starting tomorrow, we will be the 3 guardians of the library. Siying will be in charge of the time gate, Danny will teach tactics, and I will guard against the abuse of magic. Danny laughed, enemies. Whoever dares to touch the bookshelf will be guarded by my prosthetic limb. The days flowed smoothly like a river. A few weeks later, the world had completely changed. Outside the library, street magicians openly performed their tricks, children summoned rainbow bubbles, veterans healed old wounds with light balls. The old men with broken arms in the warrior area were leaning on their staffs and telling stories. Have you heard? 3 girls smashed the suppressor to bring back the magic. When Siying patrolled the bookshelves, she often met curious young people. She would stop and speak softly, no details, just bravery and responsibility. Magic is a gift, used to build bridges, not to burn down homes. Remember, there is history behind the portal. If you make a wrong step, it will be too late to regret. The newcomer nodded, with awe in her eyes. She has become a legend, the blue light guardian of the library, the hero hidden behind the stacks of books. One afternoon, when the sun filled the reading room, Siying was sorting out ancient books, and a new picture suddenly appeared in the blank space in her mind, not the fragments of amnesia, but the new piece. Sacrifice of life experience is like cutting off dead branches to make the tree stronger. She put down the book and walked out. Yushi and Danny were already waiting. Sisters, are you finished patrolling? Yushi handed over the hot chocolate, which was filled with steam. Danny leaned against the wall, her prosthetic arm flashing. Today I caught a little kid trying to sneak into the bookshelf. I'll educate him and let him go. Siying took the cup, and the hot drink warmed her hands. Thank you. These days, I feel complete. Peace is not the end, it is daily protection. They walked side by side on the street, the wind blew through the leaves, bringing the whisper of the fields. The children chased and magic sparks flew like fireflies. The veteran raised his glass, cheers to the legend. Siying smiled, her heart like the moon reflected in the lake. From accidental triggers to the establishment of a treaty, she had gone through fear and sacrifice, and transformed into the embodiment of responsibility. Bravery is not a fearless charge, but perseverance day after day. Responsibility is not a shackle, but a bond that connects the team. As the sun set, the three returned to the library. The bookshelf is silent and the lights are on, like guarding eyes. Siying stopped and looked at the arched window. We will protect the new era. Yushi held her hand and said, sisters forever. Danny nodded, as long as the team stays together, peace will never die. As night falls, the lights of the library illuminate the endless road, their laughter echoes, and the legend will live forever in the pages of the book.